and you can only ever really tell in retrospect. It seems to be working. Working. Test. Um, let's see. As soon as I say shekel, the power goes out. Yeah, maybe. And I seem to be. The mic is working for. Yeah, so I think um, it should be coming back. Let me just try and get the other monitor on. I apologize, guys. It's summer. This is just summer in Japan, and it's high pressure with the kids as well. So the electric cannot handle it, but we need more power. All right, give me my third screen. So let me. I'm clear, thank you. Just crack a blue fuse. Well, I didn't blow a fuse. It just trips out, and we're just we're victims of this small fuse box. It's a small house. It's a small fuse box, and yeah, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. And yeah, I really wish I had better equipment and better um, electricity, all that kind of stuff. But I don't. But you still got to get in there and mix it up. Alibaba solar panels needed with a sub panel for streaming. Yeah, I mean, I would like that. I really would. Just way out of my league at the moment, and I'm grateful that with you guys helping, I'm able to at least cover the electricity bill, and that is a magnificent thing for me. Because let's say in Japan, man, you don't get any support in a situation like me, and it's a case of your family has to look after you, and you're shit out of luck. No matter how much I paid into their pensions and social security schemes, they give me nothing for chronic chronic illnesses. So, like I say, the fact that I can do this, I can manage this, pay my electric bill, and that's a good thing. And if it helps sort of demystify the chaos that's going on, and I hope I didn't lose all my tabs. Maybe I did. No, oh, maybe these were the tabs that we had open. Yeah, well, I think we're good. So this was I can't remember who put this in. Maybe I'm not sure. Whoever put this in the Discord, but this is what you're getting in doctor's office. Okay, so the truth about COVID-19 increase in Texas. Because the cases of COVID-19 were declining, the CDC changed the definition of COVID-19 to influenza-like illness, ILI, to count positive cases. This includes deaths from pneumonia, influenza, or COVID-19. These three conditions are now called PIC, pneumonia, influenza, COVID, and all deaths from any of these conditions are counted as COVID deaths. Keep in mind, pneumonia deaths was twice as high as COVID before they included pneumonia in the count. In addition, they are now counting anyone who has been in contact with someone who has been, regarding the contact tracing, etc. But let's just, let's have a look at the CDC, and here we can see that we have a peak in excess deaths, and they might be pneumonia related because SARS is a pneumonia related disorder. And like I say, I've shown you yesterday, so in Twitter, let's just see if he's responded, but there's this dude that's convinced that it's all a scam, and let's just see. I think it was in this thread, but people are looking at this data, okay, and basically saying that influenza is way in excess of COVID deaths. But what this person doesn't seem to understand is that if you look at the CDC data, let's try and pull that up. I didn't want to get into. I wanted to look at this, who this person is, and we'll break down how they're misinterpreting the deaths with respect, or the stats with respect to SARS. And it's a case of people reading into statistics what they want to see, and this is why I keep warning you about real-time posting of data, projection of data is fraught with all sorts of errors, category errors, and you can only ever really tell in retrospect. And in that sense, you need to be, all statistics you need to treat with a skeptical eye. And if you're one of those that believe that it's all a scam, you have to check your sources, because if you're going to listen to someone like this who's obviously distorting, so he's taking data from let's see if I can find that. Is it this thread? I never quite figure out SARS Twitter, whether I'm responding to or which posts are responding, and where it's increasing a oh God, I can hear the kids going again. I can't find it right now, and it wasn't what I wanted to discuss this stream anyway. I'm just babbling while people come in, so we might have a look at this. Denmark says no benefit to masks. Tranny vagabond. He is a definitive mouthpiece for the Communist Chinese Party, and Denmark has compare it to Sweden, and it has incredibly low rates of death, like 10 times less death over the period that they shut down. Okay, so that tells you that isolation is working. And now with some of the lowest infection rates, they want to pop up and say masks don't work. Well, again, look at real life examples like Asia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and they've managed to contain the virus, I would argue, because we didn't shut down, okay? In Japan, schools shut down, that was it. It's the masks that lower the infective load, and it's you can't get around that fact. And looking at little outliers like Norway is not the way to sort of make an argument for, well, one, this dude, I don't like this dude because he signal boosted Kaufman, and I would say that a lot of the reason that the United States is in the messes it's in is because people like Kaufman got in and got that stupid message across that there's no such thing as viruses. So even the most basic and simplistic elements of biology were being debated on the internet, and people jumping on bandwagons and causing this chaos. And then you've got the whole the mindset with masks and them cocking it up, and you have to think, well, was it really, how deliberate was that, etc. Were they really did they want to cause maximum chaos? I don't know, but I would say tranny vagabond. I would so I don't even show up in the main feed when I'm live. Am I on the main page? If you guys look at YouTube, or do you just see me in this little side panel? Well, I know I'm gonna get. See me in this little and I do have side panel. I do have to get. Well, I have to fight for every stream because my streams get taken down a lot. Probably because I piss a lot of people off. If someone's got 100,000 subscribers like Tranny Vagabond here, they're gonna flag my channel up when I start laying out the facts as they really are and trying to not editorialize them in a fashion that suits an ideological line. I would say that what I'm trying to do is do it along the scientific line, give warnings where I think appropriate, and and try to look at it at a big picture level. So places like the United States, where they do tend to act like they're in a bubble, understand that there are other places in the world, they have different responses and different reactions, and this can help you tune your response in a more coherent fashion. So where were we before with I want to just try and get on with what I was talking about, which is the kids. It was the kids. And oh yeah, this was an interesting case. So 7-year-old boy in Georgia died, okay, and they would say there's just one thing. Okay, let's find out what this one thing is. and I will then give my opinion. So it's been widely reported in the last several days that sometime within the past 10 days to 2 weeks, a 7-year-old boy from Chatham County, Georgia, died from COVID-19. If the media didn't say the child died from COVID-19, they reported he died of COVID-19 or of coronavirus. Even Fox News declared a 7-year-old boy from Savannah, Georgia, with no underlying conditions, became the youngest victim to die from the coronavirus. Like Fox News, virtually all the media repeatedly reported that the child had no underlying conditions, even my local radio station repeating the deception every 30 minutes for hours on end, which among other conservative program carries the Rush Limbaugh show, help perpetuate this latest example of Wuhan virus fear porn. Well, let's find out if it's fear porn and what we were dealing with respect to this child. Where were we? However, the AP went on to say the boy had no other chronic health conditions, according to data released by the state. The boy's death comes amid nationwide debate about the risk that children face in getting infected or spreading coronavirus, particularly as the school year begins. The implication is that schools should not reopen, full sports should not be played, and America must remain in shutdown mode. I don't think America should remain in shutdown mode. I think it needs to be more pragmatic and tactical in how it opens. If not for our own sake, we must do it for the children. Will no one think of the children? As is often the case with so many things when it comes to the Wuhan virus and the drive by media, few things could be farther from the truth. As of late Friday evening, except for one Savannah TV station, whose more accurate accounts I first found via Facebook, I could find no drive-by media telling the whole story on this tragic episode. WTOC reporter Syria Sandlin provides some crucial details on the 7-year-old's death that the vast majority of the media has so far ignored. New information on child COVID death. We have some new information about the youngest COVID-19 related death in Georgia. A 7-year-old African-American boy died in Chatham County recently. Here's what we know. According to the Chatham County coroner, the child had a seizure and fell in the shower and was unresponsive. Now, a seizure tells you a lot, right? What is one of the key symptoms that we should be looking for if it's a neurotropic agent? It's seizure states, okay? And if there had been no seizure states prior to the infection, I would be very, very skeptical that he somehow just developed epilepsy and fell and died. Maybe the seizure and banging his head in the shower didn't help. Falls are often a problem with people that do have grand mal epilepsy, but the seizure is one of the key indicators which I keep trying to explain to you guys that you should be on the lookout for as a indicator that the virus is penetrating into the nervous system. And like I say, now we're pretty sure that there's this nicotinic component. That makes it all the more important to look at. Now, what's one of the treatments that we use for epilepsy? Okay, so there's something called vagal nerve stimulation. So what they'll do is they'll basically cut open the neck, they put a cuff around the vagal nerve, and they implant a stimulator in, much like deep brain stimulation, and then they pulse the vagus nerve, and this seems to have a calming effect on the epileptic brain. It's been around for many years, but if we have this cholinergic nicotinic receptor antagonism going on, and the vagal nerve is somehow being disrupted, this is another mechanism by which epilepsy can occur. Or it could have been encephalitis, a swelling of the brain, or the tissues in the brain, or the transfection through the olfactory route and penetrating into the medulla and the respiratory centers. So all those autonomic centers and drive, they propagate your rhythms, right? Their intrinsic activity, with its heart rate, breathing, peristalsis, any any automatic behavior is part of the autonomic nervous system, which has the parasympathetic and the sympathetic branch. And if I was the parents, I would want to be, like I say, might not be COVID, he might just have developed SARS, but this fits the pattern and needs to be put into that box where it needs researching. Now, if it was my child, I don't think I couldn't bring them to autopsy. I don't know if they would do it out of a matter of course. Maybe they did. I don't know. But if they did do it, they should check for these, and they're not going to look right. So what did we learn from the MRI paper, right, with the people that are long-term survivors that show the microstructural changes? The paper, it's in their Discord, that Chris found in eClinic, published by the Lancet. The damage is not all over the brain; it's in particular regions. So those limbic regions associated with olfaction are a key feature that you need to look for. And if the coroner in Chatham County, I don't know what Chatham County is like, but it might be East Bumfuck, wherever, Georgia, right? And they might just sit on the porch playing banjo, and the coroner is the vet as well. We don't know this, okay? All we know is that a child that's been diagnosed, has had a positive COVID test, had a seizure and died. And a seizure is no joke. You can die from a seizure, because once everything's gone chaotic, the jaw will lock up, they'll choke, they'll swallow the tongue, breathing gets dysregulated. All these things are a potential once you start messing with the brain. And I realise I don't have my chat up. Where's Discord gone? Please don't switch. Let me get in here. And do we have people back? People watching? Oh, back to 43. Didn't lose too many. And my voice is still a bit hoarse from last week, so we might Chris, thanks very much for this. This is quite amusing. So after people are posting the epidemiologists saying they don't need masks, which I think, just from a scientific perspective, is bonkers, right? But Denmark now recommends wearing face masks. And where are the risk factors? What do we know about the cities that got hit hardest? New York. A lot of people use public transport, right? And it's the same in Europe. Public transport is much more of a thing in big cities, especially in Europe and especially New York. The rest of the US, my experience of, I mean, this is going back a few years, but public transport was limited, I would say. It's nowhere near at the level that you see here in Japan or you see in France, etc. But the subways, the buses, these are for sure high risk areas. And if it was me, I would put a mask on a bus, right? And like I say, I'm not recommending wearing a mask all day, okay? I'm saying have one, a good one, okay, in your pocket. Invest in one of those decent cycle masks, okay, and have it in your pocket or around your neck, that if you have to get on the bus and the bus is full of running and jogging enthusiasts, mask up, man. If you're on the subway, all these things need to be taken into account when dealing with that. So, Chris, thank you very much for that. And it seems that that little bit of madness coming out of what's happening here. It was probably an issue with YouTube Kahina is a she. Is Kahina banned again? Let's see. Let's get back to here. And Anxious Aussie, thank you very much for putting links. Let me just check if I didn't hear Streamlabs go. Do I have Streamlabs and shit open? I hope so. But yeah, if you want to support the show, keep me going at this endeavor to try to unravel the mysteries of what's going on with respect to SARS. Every penny helps. I know everyone begs, but I look at the people that are just pushing conspiracy, and the amount of people that listen to that to me is stunning. It's I liked it as entertainment, because who didn't grow up and like watching the Twilight Zone or whatever. There are always sorts of mystery shows on TV, and then that got took on by the internet and amplified, and the people that listen to them and are running with that information is, well, disturbing in my mind. So let's just me try and crack on. Oh, and I wanted to check if anyone had been generous, and someone has. Let me just make sure that I say a big thank you. Dave, most generous of you. Thank you very much, and really appreciate it. It helps me keep going, and things are tight. And here's another thing, that if we're going to sort of step outside and look at the broader picture, okay, and this is why I have been saying that once we'd understood the disease dynamics with respect to the epidemiology with a rough idea, I think we should have been moving towards getting critical infrastructure back up and running. I'm not sure whether restaurants count. Well, yeah, maybe they do, right? Some people need those to go eat, right? And small businesses need to run, but I don't know. I find it odd that, particularly if you're gearing up. So a lot of what I was talking about before the power cut so rudely interrupted us was this premise that you're moving on to a war footing with China, and China, if the Communist Party feels threatened by internal dissent, will try to externalize an enemy. So they might just think, oh, we'll make a move for Taiwan. They took Hong Kong. No one batted an eyelid. Yeah, there were protesters in the streets, and yeah, it was being pushed by potential neocons on our side. But the fact is that the one country, two systems idea, which had been put in place to help protect, help sort of balance out the predations of the Chinese Communist Party, were just steamrolled. Okay, and that shows you how the Chinese communists work. And let's see. Deaths for children below 14 drop like a rock. Well, deaths for children have never been that high. And deaths isn't the only issue, Kahina, right? This is, I don't get how many times do I have to say it to people, okay? You've got a neurotropic agent. People who survive the virus, okay, are having long-term issues. We can now look at the brain, go back and look at that episode that we did, it was yesterday, okay, and look at that paper, or maybe it was the day before and I took it offline, but that paper, even though the the damage is visible on MRI, and MRI is a blunt tool to be looking for these types of fine scale changes to the neuroanatomy. Okay, so yeah, the deaths burn out, but what about the myriad of people that have suffered some degree of brain damage and you're not aware of it? How many people have been pushed into depression? How many people have been pushed into schizoid breaks? How many people have been pushed into a bipolar phase? How many people have been edged closer towards becoming epileptic from the next head bump? Right? These are things that have to be taken into account, and death is not the only metric. I don't know how many times I have to say this. And the fact that, one, it's concerning that, one, you've had a massive peak anyway, despite doing all the closures. Okay, so the drop down to normal range is in the context of massive shutdowns and Europe taking very, very defensive measures. And what I saw was that Spain is surging back with cases again. So we're going to get another peak in people dying. And so that's more old and infirm, right? So you have to think that it's like you've got a big jar of water. Okay, the virus is a drop of food coloring. Okay, and you drop that into the beaker, and it has to sort of diffuse through the whole beaker before you fully understand the properties of the dye that you've put in there. Whether you want to work out concentration, I know it's not the best of metaphors, but the fraction of population that's been impacted by the virus is still low. Okay, so deaths returning back to normal in the context of there being a very, very hard shutdown is hardly unsurprising. And you need to stop fixating on deaths, right? How many kids are being pushed towards seizure right now? How many kids are being pushed towards ADHD? We don't know. How many kids are being pushed towards the autistic spectrum? What about the evidence from the brain organoids, which shows that the virus rapidly infects neurons? Okay, and now we understand that it's got this nicotinergic or the cholinergic receptors binding properties. That makes sense with respect to the organoids. So we have to keep that in our minds as we saw in the organoids, that there's a massive restructuring of the cytoskeletal matrix that makes up a cell. Okay, it becomes deformed, and the distribution becomes deformed. And if you wanted, one of the things that they find as an anatomical correlate of autism is that neurons form. They do something called autopsis. Okay, so it's an autoptic neuron. So in most cases, a neuron will project and synapse onto a functional neighbor such that their firing tunes and adapts to the environment. But what happens in autism spectrum disorders, you can look at key areas of cortex and you see these autoptic neurons. And it's better for me to just show you what that looks like. So it's a self-stimulating neuron, right? Can we just open that, please? And it's thought that autistic children have more of these types of neurons. Okay, and it kind of makes sense, right? So what's the features of autism? It's a sort of inward-looking retreat from social interaction, right? And it would make sense that you would see a sort of correlate like that at the neuronal level. Chinese physics B. Thank you very much, Chinese physics B. Much appreciated. I just wonder if we can see a real life example of so whilst that's loading, let me catch up with questions and comments. Would a small electrical charge box help with computer? Yeah, I mean, if I had one of those backup power supplies, that would be really great, but they're expensive.
Daddy,
Yeah.
Shopkins is actually bullying us with the Wii remote control. The second one, he's pressing home again, and pressing home again so I can get rid of it, but he's keep on doing it.
William, come here. William! Come here. What are you doing with the Wii controller? Hey! Be a good boy. Look at Daddy. Be a good boy. Okay? Yes? Don't play games. You want to play, right? Yes? Hey. Stop. Okay, here you go. Be good. Close the door. Thank you. Alright. Where was I? Pictures. Hey, let's have a look. Can I see what looks like autopsis there? You could say this is, right? So is that what they would call an autoptic neuron? So you can see this sort of loop coming out from the cell body. So it's going there. There's a gap. And you follow that branch there. It's going round. And there's a gap. So anyway, Kim says lost electricity for 5 days, just came back. Well, welcome back, Kim, and to hell with the tornadoes. Margaret Hunt says lost internet for 9 hours last week after satellite affected by solar event. 60,000 users affected. Wow. Scary shit, Kim. Yeah, we got lucky around us. Big guy bit was trying to come and bug out, hopefully being fertilised in the wind. I don't know what's going on. So what about taking time to find the right bits? Battery. We had a chat earlier. Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark do not use masks, but Denmark now recommends masks as breaking news on public transport. Yeah, because their cases are going up. Denmark, by shutting down, had minimal cases compared to Sweden. Like I say, I don't. Again. It's a nice sort of experiment to have Sweden bridged by Denmark and Finland because they had very low cases, the countries either side, but Sweden's death rate went higher. And again, we get into this issue of death rate is not the only metric, okay? How many people are being left with long-term consequences? I saw some story earlier, I can't remember where, but apparently some woman lost her leg, right? And, you know, again, that's probably from the coagulopathy. And we're learning that the coagulopathy involves nicotininergic, cholinergic receptors as well. These are... so Jig says people aren't wearing masks in Vancouver at all, being sunny, as far as people seem healthy. That's good. Like I say, I'm hopeful that these types of streams that we can change topics in the near future, and it's not all black pills from SARS and trying to disambiguate the conspiracy theory versus fact. And I would say it makes sense if you're in a crowded enclosed space, put a mask on. You know, it's just simple physics at the end of the day. Denmark also has a long history of giving up and surrendering. They do. Yeah, it works. I've done 4 so far. What does backup bank? Kev, you are a little bit on the side. Okay. Simon, how you doing? Colleagues probably wouldn't hurt to have a go in case I need to stay one day. Regular business as usual, working fine. Use brand new tube. Their motto is not to censor. Yeah, I'm setting up for a brand new tube. I did part of it, but then there was a bit about adding IDs, etc. And I just, there's too many. Like, you can hear in the background the kids going off all the time. It's constant battle. We are in a bubble. If this were the case, no COVID would be here. Yeah, no pufters, Dave. What is the timing for releasing the lockdown in Australia? I don't know. He hit max griff limit. I'm not grifting, cracker. In-person school is starting in Texas in 4 days. Yes, that could be problematic because Texas is already sort of under strain from the current spread. And like I say, the US is not one country; it's 50 countries, and so you have to expect that the spread is going to be different, and depending on population density as well. And the thing that works in favour for the United States is you do have, a lot of space, and that's going to help you in the end. And I want to say thank you to Rob as well. The donations really appreciated. Thank you very much. Let's see. Pubs and clubs are about to open up again here. Mr. Cracker's back. Yeah, he's back. We took a vote and we decided that his particular brand of humour and obnoxiousness is kind of humorous. So we let him back in. You call those pubs? Why did child's deaths plummet all over Europe as COVID spread? Because the schools closed. It's not that hard to understand. Works in brand new tube sales. Because flus, etc. also yeah, that's the thing. Everything's shut down. Which Kahina needs to know this is one of the things, right? So yeah, we've looked at the Momo graphs, right? Again, Christian, it's not just deaths, okay? Deaths are bad. And, there was a lot of excess death. They locked down and it went down, and now they're opening back up and cases will surge and we'll probably see spikes in deaths as well. But the deaths, yeah, they're bad, but in my mind it's not the big problem. The big problem is the long-term neural aspect. Okay, let's see, go back to work or bed. It can go with simultaneously YouTube streaming. It seemed like a good thing to get onto. Yeah, Chris is a dashing-looking individual. Let's see, I'm catching up with the questions right now. Find the nearest baboon, say hello Mummy Tart, he's in the military manning. Alright, so that's up to date with the questions. I'm missing apparently two things in the me, so one is okay, that's that taken care of. So let's move on with some of the stories that we had to do. The primary ones I wanted to do was the kids, right? And I think what you're going to see is this large leap as the kids go back to school. They bring the infection back to the homes, and then we have to deal with that at some level. But you can't shut down forever. And if we're stepping up for some type of conflict or gearing up for some type of conflict, you need your industries and your workforce active as well. And so, whatever will be, but we need to think sensibly. So 1,000 new cases in the UK. This is obviously as they've released, they've slackened off the lockdown, and it's to be expected. I'm not surprised by this. But the UK had, the UK wanted to go the herd immunity route, right? And what happened? It just overwhelmed them, so they locked down. And you have to strike a balance between your strategic reserves with respect to your medical facilities versus your economy versus getting people back into the workforce and all the fallout. It's such a complex equation that people trying to think that one factor is going to fix it all, or the deaths going back down into normal range means the problem is over. It's not. It's a long-term issue now as we try to understand how this virus penetrates into the population, because you have to remember just a fraction of the population has been impacted. What are we at? 20 million cases right now? I want to say 20 million. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet, right? There we go, 20 million. And I'm gonna guess, it's kind of flattening out, which is good. But then it's the summer, and like I say, we don't know in retrospect how this is gonna look. Yeah, let's look. Stupid computer. Too early to tell, right? In this, again, I fall back to this position. Everything is too early with an unknown agent to be making definitive statements either way. Okay, the only thing that you can say is there's a lot more we need to find out, and I would be wary of these sweeping statements that Kahina is making. Okay, because flues, etc. Yeah, they plummeted. Which Kahina needs to know? This is one of the things way back when was occurring in China, and we've had seizures in the US with COVID-19 cases because she doesn't believe it goes on with COVID. Yeah, I guess there's a bit of sort of one-track thinking going on with Kahina. Let's see, I did that. Yeah, I'm up to date with the questions. Or are we? No, it seems that YouTube is not, or Discord is not updating. So let me see. Goddamn software. Why? Where's the Restream chatbot? Restream chatbot, please. Are you updating? Yeah, so this is not updating, so that's why I don't see the YouTube comments. Fuck you. Alright, let me just read the back to 50 watchers. Yeah, that's good. I mean, we're sort of developing a sort of solid base of audience right now. And I hope in the near future I'll be able to expand on sort of other topics rather than focusing on SARS, but I can sort of turn what I am comfortable dealing with is data and graphs and the nervous system and speaking publicly to some extent about how to interpret data, and like I say, especially with the brain. And this is my worry is right now that the clinicians and the medics, a lot of them just don't get the neural aspect. Everyone is, they're still locked into this idea of the ACE2 infection route in the lungs. And I'm not saying that's not important, but I think long term, that's the nasty sting in the tail, is the nicotinic pathway. Let's see, I need to catch up on. Oh, I've missed a lot of questions from or comments from YouTube. So can you pop that out? Where's my pop out? Pop out chat. Ow. Thank you. Alright, so let's try and go back through this, and we'll go through, because let's hope Kahina has sort of understood that it's not just death. It does look like the article bias about the masks in Denmark was skewed. I saw a different version of the same story and it didn't say masks don't work. Be smart if you are in a tubal petri dish. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, tubal petri dish. It said the experts thought the Danes were too dumb to maintain other methods if they masked up, i.e. distancing and hygiene. Yeah, and this idea, or this aspect of the experts trying to tell the population you're too dumb to use masks was literally one of the things that just triggered me to get online and just say, what the how do you sort of get away with being so patronizing to the general public? Hypnagogue says, she's absolutely, Kevin is spot on and doing an awesome job. Thank you very much. All compliments accepted. And I'm not sure which particular bit I'm being complimented about. Desperately want Taiwan for the Taiwan semiconductor. Yeah, for sure. It's a big factor in the equation here. But it's not like China doesn't have its own facilities either. There's other reasons that China wants Taiwan, right? And it's nationalistic reasonings. They feel that it's occupied, it's their territory, and it's been taken over, and it's a big deal, man. Look, in Asia, they go bonkers about small little rocks that jut out of the ocean and what belongs to who. And I remember when my son was being born in the hospital in Daegu in South Korea, the water fountain, right? So you could go and grab a paper cup and dispense yourself some water, and on the paper cup it had I can't remember the name of the islands now, which Korea and Japan squabble about, but basically in Korean it was saying those islands belong to South Korea, and that was on a paper cup in a water dispenser in a hospital, right? So if they're that bonkers, and South Korea and Japan are sort of allies to some extent, well, in big extent, there's a lot of exchange between Japan and Korea. Imagine how the Communist Party views Taiwan. Let's see. So, morphine sandwich, is that morphine sandwich? So, I'm glad some people are standing for Taiwan since it's superior to China in every way. Yeah, man. I'm of the opinion that you gotta back up the things that you say, right? And as a culture and a civilization, if we've said, we respect Taiwan's independence and the people of Taiwan want to be independent from China, and we'll back them, then we bloody well better back them, because what happens if you don't? All these critical points in your infrastructure, the trade routes, fall because they see you're unable to maintain law and order, which is why it's so important to the US to get a grip on the insurgency that they've got going on their streets. And look, in my mind, I'm happy to turn around and say that's literally a Bolshevik communist type insurgency that's being driven by the left's ideology with respect to race, right? And like I say, we've looked at Black Lives Matter. I think Anxious Aussie turned me on to their webpage, where they call out the white heteronormative family as being their ideological enemy. Okay, if that's the case, if you're my enemy, then fine, let's get it on. as far as I'm concerned, because you're not coming and getting my kids, okay? And my kids are going to learn from a very early age that blood and soil matters. They've been born in Japan, and like I was taught, my grandfather was a prisoner of war to the British, and because that part, my grandfather and grandmother stayed in Britain, or she came after the war. Basically, we weren't allowed to learn Italian, right, from my grandparents. They refused to do it because they said, you're in Britain now, or in England, you have to learn and be British. Right? That was their thinking back then, after the war. And I will instill the same in my children. Obviously I'll give them leeway because they're not Japanese, they're not full Japanese, and we're culturally different. But I wouldn't do the equivalent of the jihadi rape gangs and Bantustans that have emerged in the UK and Europe, where they want to segregate from the culture. No, I want my kids into the Japanese culture. That's why we send them to school. Okay, and even my youngest is going back after this summer holiday. Okay, because they do need to be, and especially as foreigners in this country, I can't homeschool them and give them the Japanese culture, right? So I'm dependent on the school in that way. So anyway, I don't know. I can't remember why I got onto the tip of schooling my kids about being Japanese, but let's see. Suicides on the rise, and sorry, I do not buy it. It's because of stay-at-home orders for most. Yeah, that's. I don't buy that. Right. So we know that violence is skyrocketing everywhere, not just the United States. Right. And I find it hard to believe that people's family lives are so miserable at home that they would top themselves, or they would resort to severe domestic abuse because of a lockdown order. I don't know, man. That didn't happen in our household. I don't see it happening in any households around me. Well, but then we didn't really lock down. But I don't know, man. You're a family unit because you love each other, right? And that's the building brick of your society and culture. And it says a lot that if it's true that people can't stand their own spouses and their own children, the children can't stand their parents in such a way that it drives them to suicide, I would just make the argument that that's an indicator of how much we've been infiltrated by those that would want to deconstruct the patriarchal white heteronormative family. And in my book, they've called me out. They've called you out, right? They've said that you're the enemy, okay? And my advice would be to treat them as such as well. Do not show them quarter in this respect, because at the moment it's an ideological battle. You have to do it with words and thoughts and engaging in a philosophical debate, not only with yourself, but your immediate friends, family, and maybe doing what I'm doing. Get online, get your words and your thoughts onto YouTube, onto a stream, get people to try and listen to the things that you're saying, and then you can, as you build networks and you learn, like the brain. That's what the brain does. It builds a network and it looks for input from other networks, and the core network can filter the information better. And what do I do right now is I literally have to spend my time going through the Discord, because there's enough people that it's reached a critical mass that there's new stuff coming in all the time, and I try to read every comment, and I try to read every article and every scientific paper before I come on stream and start talking about it. But it takes a long time to do that thoroughly. So I've had trouble with that because I was not well at the end of last week, and it seems to me that with the what is it? I saw a funny way someone put it. Beirutoshima or something like that. Some play on Hiroshima as being the sort of dock explosion, and um, the there's just been a sort of deluge of information from that, and a lot of that's centered around the fact that children are being impacted. Why is that information coming forward? Because the schools are opening, right? So, it shows that the lockdown in the early part of the year limited the impact on children, okay? And we've got anecdotal cases. So there was a case, I want to say it was Spain or Portugal, where they had to abort a baby because the lungs had become too infected with SARS-CoV-2. I'm not, I don't know enough about the case itself, but abortion should really be the last resort, and unless the baby was dead inside, I don't know if they should have. In my mind, they should have been trying some type of therapy before abortion. Let's see, let me try and give the babies freedom sticks. Yeah, light those freedom torches for the kids, and or get one of those not vaping, but nebulizers, right? And drop the nicotine fluid in there and flood their bedrooms with nicotine. 8KLM says, during the Korean War, Chiang Kai-shek offered to Truman to have 500,000 Chinese soldiers landed in Korea to help them fight the North Koreans and Red Chinese. Truman nixed it. Chiang Kai-shek offered to Truman. Who's Chiang Kai-shek? Chinese soldiers land in Korea to help. I don't know about that story, 8KLM. I will look into it. We had explorers, pioneers, and we still have rural folk living harder, more isolated lives than any of the soy sippers from Melbourne. I have to say, you do have some characters, Anxious Aussie, after watching the Shunganite grifters, and if that's a thing, this Shunganite thing, maybe we'll look at it, because it plays into the 5G and 5G causing COVID, which is nonsense. What are people of Perth like? Poofters. We've grown soft. Yeah, you grow soft because the sacrifices made from previous generations give you this breathing space. Right? That's the whole point of it. That's why they went to war, and they hand you this legacy, and it's up to you as being the custodians to make sure it's handed off to your children. But what have we done? We dismantled that. We dismantled it with the idea of globalized economies and the dissolving of borders, the free movement of capital and the free movement of people. So the poor people are going to move to where there's money, okay? And then those poor people are prepared to endure hardships that someone who's grown up and is indigenous to that area, so I can speak in the context of the UK. If you've got people that are prepared to live 20 to a house, okay, and work half the average wage doing the menial jobs, that then just puts whole swathes of your own country into a situation where they can't compete. Because what are those transient workers doing? Sending back those wages back to Mogadishu, where they're worth 10 times more the amount of money, and they're paying off a nice big bunker and gold-plated AK-47s. And to me, that's been the disaster of the post-Second World War era, right? And I can speak to that from respect of, I have an immigrant mongrel background because of my grandfather being captured in the war, right? But that type of mix, or being mixed that way, was a consequence of the war, and it grew out of the war. And like I say, the ideology that sort of informed my grandparents and my parents was, you don't speak the other language, Italian. You speak and act like you're from the UK, right? And the Italian. My mother's Italian, right? So you can say that I'm half Italian in that respect. and half Celtic, right? And but I was encultured and absorbed by the UK culture, okay? And this is something that this is different to how the new third world workers who are literally walking into Europe, right? And there was some bonkers article I looked at last night. I was falling asleep. So in this year alone, by small boats, 4,000 migrants have crossed into the UK. And what are the UK doing? They're putting them up in some of the most expensive hotels in London. Right? This to me is again another instance of the theatre of the absurd. Okay, and how are the people who are struggling in the UK? So what are they to make of the fact that they're struggling to get work, struggling to get
Mommy, I want to show you something.
Daddy's busy working. Do you show Daddy later?
Mommy.
Do you show Daddy later?
No.
Yes. Be a good boy. Here, you can have a mint. Okay. Daddy kiss. Right, Daddy show you later. Good boy. Now close the door. I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, 4,000 people coming across the channel, and they're just letting them in. I think at the current state, why isn't the Navy catching them in international waters and then depositing them somewhere else and gunning the boats so they sink? Right? Why are you letting 4,000 people in that are potential carriers of disease when you're causing the rest of the country to be shut down? These things don't make sense, but it sort of fits, and this is where you're sliding into this idea of there being this. Well, we know there's a globalist agenda, this push for the free trade, and then you're going to have the oligarch class that have all the industries and the corporations, and then you're going to have the workers within those corporations, and they're all stratified, and then you're going to have those that are on the bottom rung, and you could say, well, I was part of that technocracy because I was principal investigator and doing science, etc. But that's not that far up in terms of the science and where you can go. Okay, I could probably have earned more money driving a truck, right, than I've ever got paid doing science. But anyway, the point being that in this moment where we have this chance to take back the industries that were part of our countries that the previous generations built, okay, and we've basically took them away, and we've kind of got soft because we now do service industry type jobs where or the men are unemployed, they're long-term unemployed. Hey,
I finished the middle up.
Okay, so Daddy's working, and come on, no more mints now. Close the door. Close the door. Come on. Good boy. Point being, I'm blood and soil matters, right? And particularly at times like this, okay? And in that blood and soil, you want to find like individuals, right? You need to find like-minded people. So how do we start maneuvering on this new battlefield that is the low intensity bio warfare through agents like SARS, coupled with ideological battle that's being fought on the internet? Well, you aggregate around people that you think are passing you useful information, and you build around that, okay? And then you say, and that then becomes a little network and information filter, and then it sort of grows, hopefully organically, okay? And then you're able to start addressing bigger questions. So now we can, for example, we'll look at the cretins that Anxious Aussie was looking at that are selling fullerene rocks to protect you from 5G. I encourage people to go watch that. It's quite funny, actually. So anyway, let's see. Siblings are so annoying. They are. My understanding is the brain cell damage is permanent. Again, we can't answer that fully, and the brain does have some recoverable components to it, but it's a long, slow process. Okay, and these long haulers, remember, tiny fraction of your population are infected, but 2/3 of nurses in a small country like Ireland now have these long hauler conditions, which is indicative that they've suffered a brain insult. Okay, and how long before they can get back on their feet, or how long are their families going to suffer? Why are we pouring billions into sketchy vaccines when we should be pouring money into these frontline workers to make sure that we've got enough, they're skilled enough, and one, they're looking after our old people, they're looking after the people that get into hospital, and there's support there that for people that have that suffer the effects of the brain assault. Okay, or even, well, and also the systemic assault from coagulopathies. If people are losing limbs because their blood clotting is messed up, okay, there should be some support available, particularly if this is a consequence of man's messing with nature to some extent. And everyone was involved, okay, we know that, but the hand grenade went off in China, or the sticky tar baby bomb that they were handing between each other went off in China. And so we have to start there. And if China can make a good case for the fact that it didn't come from there, we should listen to it. But I don't think they're going to be able to do it. Okay, I think the evidence racks up that it comes from China, and there's a tort that can be made against them, right? But this tort, the Chinese are just going to turn around and say, well, if you want to engage in tortious a claim for a tort, you're going to have to do it in Chinese courts, etc. And they just blow it off, okay? And they're going to ignore anything with respect to the UN. Anyway, let me get on with the comments. There's worse things than having to stay in the comfort of one's home. Yeah, that's another thing, man. It could be a lot fucking worse. People don't get that yet, and this is the thing that, at a personal level, that I find really frustrating, is that, okay, if we're gearing up to have a square go with the Ching Chongs, if America is so disorganized and so ideologically warped with respect to even the most simplest things, and the fact that their social fabric is being torn apart, I would say, a lot by COVID zombies, okay, and the COVID zombies are on both sides, which is why you're seeing such distortions to the narrative that people are speaking about. It could get way worse than what it is right now, and people need to wake up to that fact. Let me just check I'm not missing too much. So I have to keep switching between Poseidon Live's in here. How you doing, dude? I have to say I enjoyed very much your link about the young people being infected. So actually, if you could do me a favor, Poseidon Live, if you're listening, drop a link in. Can you use the Discord? I can look for it, right? I'm being lazy. But Poseidon Live did this. I can't remember if I played it or not, but he did this sort of little montage of young people being affected by here. Yeah, so I think I don't know if I played it on stream. Whilst this is playing, I'm gonna grab a cup of tea, and I will be back with you in a minute. So shout out to Poseidon Live for this particular
You kind of feel invincible in a way when you're young and healthy and don't have a previous past history of getting really sick.
There seems to be a belief, when you look at the statistics, that this is a disease that only affects the people at a certain age or with pre-existing conditions.
It's been said time and time again that most people who get very sick with COVID-19 and most people who die are over the age of 60. But that does not mean younger people are immune.
Young adults account for nearly 1/3 of all new COVID-19 cases over the last month.
The city's mayor says people aged 20 to 39 are not seeing the drop-off in case numbers the way other age brackets have.
That demographic really looks at themselves as being more willing to take make risky decisions.
Laura Nichols never thought she would get sick with COVID-19. The 19-year-old college student says she wore masks regularly and had no pre-existing conditions. But then the symptoms began.
Where numbers aren't falling, among Chicago's 18 to 29-year-olds, spiking over that same 2-month period.
According to data provided by the city, people aged 20 to 39 made up 1/3 of total cases 2 months ago. Within the last month, that number jumped up to 50%.
Laura didn't think it was a big deal at first. But on day 6 of her symptoms, she says things took a turn for the worse. Laura had trouble breathing, and her temperature reached 102 degrees.
46% of the new cases reported today were people in their 20s and 30s.
Young people thinking that they're a little bit more invincible, like not worrying as much. So I think young people are definitely being more social lately, unfortunately.
Like, it hit me so hard that I kind of thought that it was something else, because I was like, well, all I heard was that people my age were asymptomatic and like you wouldn't even really notice, but it turned into like this thing that was a lot scarier than that.
At that point, she decided to get tested, and the results came back positive. Doctors told her she had pneumonia too, most likely caused by COVID-19.
El Paso health leaders say young adults made up 46% of Sunday's numbers. Additionally, 15% of new cases were teens and younger, and 14.4% were people in their 60s and older.
For the second week of July, Canadians in their 20s accounted for 1/4 of those new cases, the largest proportion of any age group. Public health officials are worried.
I'm hearing on social media about a lot of pool parties. People are gathering at those. They're not wearing their masks.
57% of all those cases are people under the age of 39 and right up in the 20s. And I just have a message for the young people. Don't go to a party. Simple.
The vast majority of these new cases are in people in their 20s, and they are largely related to having attended private parties.
20-some-year-old girl went to a party with her friends, got COVID. Before she was symptomatic, visited her 80-year-old grandparents, and they got sick. The granddaughter who brought the COVID to her grandparents was admitted to the ICU, intubated. 10 days later, woke up, but her grandfather had passed the day before she woke back up.
Most of those cases are people under the age of 40.
In the last few weeks, over 50% of the new cases have been in the 20 to 44 range. And so that does impact, because this range of folks tends to be more healthy, not have chronic illnesses. And one of the things that they're finding out is that they're not invincible. They actually will get sick to the point of being hospitalized.
60% are younger than 45. The hospital had to open a 4th specialized COVID unit.
Desmond Silva just graduated nursing school and immediately started working on the front lines against COVID-19. Desmond's mom says she was worried when he tested positive for coronavirus, but was grateful he got through it with no major symptoms. Desmond even went back to work at Largo Medical Center, but 2 months after his recovery, something happened.
He said that he had pain in the back of his neck, pain in the back of his head, and he knew that something was wrong immediately.
Desmond ended up in the emergency room last Thursday. Since then, he's been on a ventilator and paralyzed from the neck down. His mom, who's also a nurse, says he's being treated for inflammation of the spinal cord caused by a viral infection. She says doctors are stumped about his case and how it's related to COVID-19.
A growing number of younger people are getting sick. In the last week, more than 60% of newly reported cases were people under the age of 39, and nearly 1/3 of them had to be hospitalized.
Rising infections across the country, mostly among people ages 20 to 39.
Ontario is seeing a spike in cases of COVID-19 in the 20 to 39 age group.
We're seeing cases in younger populations now. We're seeing mainly the 20 to 29 and 30 to 39 age groups. So, which is not surprising with people getting out and doing more.
There are young people in Australia now and around the world
that have become severely affected from COVID-19, and there have been fatalities.
Younger people, even though they don't necessarily have a very severe acute illness, may go on to have quite prolonged, quite severe debility after the illness and suffer some degree of disability for quite some time after acute infections.
I thought I was just waking up and, needing a breath from waking up. So I called my mom back again and I was like, yeah, I'm having trouble breathing. It felt like I was getting too much air in, but letting go of the air felt like the air was trapped.
She told me she was so winded that she had a hard time walking. So at that point, I was staying calm, but I gave my keys to the boss and I said, listen, I'm going early to lunch. I don't know if I'll be back. By the time I got home, I asked her to walk and she was so lethargic, so weak, she could barely stand up.
Another COVID cluster by the shore. This time, more than 24 lifeguards in Long Beach Island contracted the virus. And officials say it happened at parties on July 12th and 14th.
The sedative did help because when you feel like you can't breathe, you're like, oh my God, I can't breathe, which makes it even worse.
Breathe. Okay, one more. Sorry. I know, sorry. I'm sorry.
Felt like weights were sitting right here on my chest. Like I could not get barely any air in. I had the biggest headache. It felt like my head was like a hot air balloon. I was just gonna explode. But I was like, I don't want to go back if we don't have to. You know what I mean?
In Middletown, a group of teens ages 15 to 19 are battling the virus after a party on July 11th. It has officials there pleading for young people to take social distancing more seriously.
It's kind of a scary situation. In fact, for the past 7 days, we've had 65 cases of positive COVID in town, and 80% have been 15 to 19-year-olds.
But first, a big concern among Washington's youth. In the last 2 weeks, the highest COVID rates are in young adults between 20 and 24.
She had no energy, she couldn't breathe. And what I do recall is her telling me she wants her dad. I wish my dad was here. Her dad passed away 10 years ago this month. I've never heard her say that, so my heart I was really alarmed at that. I was just, inside I was dying.
In the last month, 147 students at UW's Greek Row have gotten COVID-19, and health officials believe it's spreading from there.
COVID cases are going up in younger adults and older teens now.
We saw students lined up to get tested at UW after the COVID-19 outbreak hit Greek Row earlier this month.
And I'm honestly surprised that more people didn't get infected.
So far, the University of Washington says 147 students contracted coronavirus living on Greek Row or socializing with students who do. Across all 3 UW campuses, another 63 students tested positive.
Back in March, he and 4 friends went skiing in Colorado. Several days later, he woke up to their texts back home.
And they're all saying like, hey, is anybody else feeling kind of weird and funny today? Personally, my body was just aching like crazy and I had these muscle aches and I was like, man, did I really ski that hard?
The seasonal flu was ruled out.
24 hours later, I get this call from my doctor and he said that I tested positive for COVID-19. And at that point, I was just shocked.
His ski buddies got the same news.
In the last 2 weeks, statewide, the highest rates of COVID-19 occurred in young adults between 20 and 24.
That attitude is reflected in these images of pool parties and packed bars, gatherings that have become more frequent since many lockdowns ended.
State health officials expect hospitalizations and deaths to follow the spike in cases among young adults.
The coronavirus is spreading among teens at an alarming rate, especially in Northeast Connecticut.
Young adults are continuing to spread COVID-19 here in Multnomah County.
Latest numbers show COVID-19 is spreading quickly among younger age groups.
The latest COVID-19 data released Sunday shows people in their 20s and 30s are leading the infection rate. Public health officials believe social gatherings are to blame.
None of us are immune, but all of us need to play our part.
It's not going to be normal as it was before. It's a new normal, and none of us live in a vacuum. Whatever age we are, we interact with other people, and so you never know who's more susceptible and who's higher risk. And you could be asymptomatic and be fine, but then transmitting to others.
I have 4 daughters. They don't necessarily read newspapers, nor do they watch television news, ever. And they're educated girls. They get their information totally from social media. How are we going to get the message through to them that as a group, women aged 20 to 29, that they have the highest number of infections? This is a really vitally important question. The highest group is 20 to 29 women.
Only 1%. 1%.
Holy shit. I've never seen such a round head. As much as Kaufman has a heg head, he literally has a moon head. Fantastic, sir. I salute you. You rock that round skull.
It's far lower than even, nationally reported rates. Who's the 1%? Do you want to be the 1%? Because I don't know who the 1% is going to be. No one really does. But behind those numbers are people.
Yeah.
And you really don't want it to be you.
Yeah, so great work by Poseidon, and if you're not a subscriber to his channel, I highly recommend to subscribing. He does great work, and it's a brilliantly put together little documentary there. Not documentary, but sort of aggregation of facts. And yes, it's a sort of editorialized view, but we can put that in the context of the big picture, and what that man was saying at the end with respect to the women. Why is it always the women, man? Tell me that. I don't know. I guess in the Bible it says that women are to be at the heel of men all the time, right? Is it something like that? I can't remember the scripture, but there are extreme elements to this equation that have not played out yet that we can be sure of, and we're getting into a situation, and I don't know how much more I can sort of repeat it without sounding boring, but where your routine and life as you normally grew up with, so this idea of cheap goods from Walmart, highly extended supply chains bringing goods from all across the world because that saves a penny on the dollar. We saw how fragile that was just a few weeks ago, and it has the potential to get much worse, especially if some kind of conflict is brewing. And I find it hard to imagine if the strategic okay, so she is unable to post to YouTube. I don't know why you can't post to YouTube, Kina. Probably because you've got an old YouTube ID that did get banned, but I can't see your footage. I can't see your questions in here to unban you, but I'll try. Anyway, let me try and get through the questions. So yeah, there's worse things than staying at home. A lot of Perth people are wealthy from the mining industry. It's good. Can we get more Perth people to subscribe to the channel? That would be great. Drive to survive, less overall common sense, creativity, etc. Alan Bond, ring a bell? No. Okay, school pickup time, back soonish. You take care, anxious. Let's see. Dr. Kev, how am I feeling? Better now. I think, my wife was ill. She didn't test. Oh, you know what? She's having issues still, so maybe she got a false negative back, and she's having a lot of malaise issues, and the kids screaming and running around are trying for her right now, and maybe it was a sort of COVID type response. I felt somewhat poorly Wednesday, Thursday. I started sort of aching, but I put that down to I did really long streams back to back. And the I don't know if I caught or picked it up, but I was aching a lot and I couldn't. It's YouTube ban, not you. I said kikes too much. Yeah, well, always when you're speaking about our greatest ally in the Middle East, Kristen, you should always speak highly and sing their praises. Hallelujah, Allah Akbar. Let's see. I'm telling you, we are one country. We really are supposed to be 50 countries. Back to 50 watchers. 51? Is it 51 states? No, the US is 50 states, right? Cuomo sends them on field trips to adult nursing homes. Yeah, this whole thing with nursing homes, etc. People are going to look back at that and be, in terms of history, astonished that we would do something, a blunder so stupid. But then, you don't know. This is how some of these people think, that the economic burden of looking after the old, well, they might just need to clear some spaces in those homes, right? That's the level of the psychopathy that you have to deal with sometimes when dealing with these people. And, if you've got people going around saying viruses aren't real and any other nonsense, that just feeds in, and they think it's safe to send these people back. And the issue surrounding central nervous issues, just surrounding old people is disastrous in my mind. I think even in Australia, right, where they have lockdown, 17 deaths yesterday, 10 were old people's homes. So Kristen says there's already criminal cases going on in Italy, Spain, Ireland and the UK. Oh, good. And yeah, much more PR is needed about the CNS problem. Why are none of the MSM picking it up? They only show cases and deaths. I think, well, they do talk about it a little bit, but if the way I speak to you guys, and I'm just upfront about the facts, and I just say, well, it looks like we have something approximating a airborne rabies, okay, that, it's variable in its impact, but has a rabies mechanism. If you say that on the mainstream news, people are going to hear rabies and panic, right? And a lot of this is all about not panicking people at a mass level. That's where all the psyops come in. That's where all this, I think I'm of the opinion that a lot of the lockdowns being introduced is about entraining people in the modern day equivalent of duck and cover, okay? And we in somewhere like the United States, it would be virtually impossible, and especially if you said, oh, we're on a DEFCON 1 with the Chinese Communist Party, that would cause chaos as well in the United States. So you can see why there would be I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's kind of understandable, because mass chaos in the streets is a problem. So when you go through basic training, part of that is crowd control, and like for situations where looting can occur. So I wanted to sort of look at some 80s or even 70s sort of nuclear type films, infomercials, I guess, whatever you would call them, public safety adverts that outlined some of the types of social conditioning that was prevalent back then and how people had to respond. And that, yeah, let's just look at that rather than let me just check what I wanted to look at on here. And there was the Nature paper which Marie wanted to look at, and let's see what this is. So here they're talking about, so here they make a pseudovirus with green fluorescent protein. It's a nifty little tag you can insert into gene sequences. So again, here's something that tells you that we have the molecular tools, etc., to make these types of interventions. But let's see, this last bit is interesting. Infection was highly cytolytic, as infected ciliated cells were necrotic and shed over time onto the luminal surface of the epithelium. SARS-CoV GFP also replicated to a lesser extent in ciliated cell cultures derived from hamster or rhesus monkey airways. Efficient SARS-CoV infection of ciliated cells in HAE provides a useful in vitro model of human lung origin to study characteristics of SARS-CoV. Let's just see if we can see some GFP figures. There we go. So those green blobs, these are the ciliated cells, I guess, and those green blobs are where the virus is expressing the green fluorescent protein. And I want to, where green GFP, I want to say it was from some sea creature or fireflies. Green fluorescent protein, and let's check wiki. Composed of 238 amino acids. Where is it from though? The GFP from A Victoria has a major excitation peak. What's A Victoria? The Aquiora Victoria green fluorescent protein. What is Aquiora? I knew it was some type of sea water creature, but maybe like a algae or something. But anyway, they can insert that protein in and into the genome of the virus, have it replicate, and then see where it comes from. So what is it? Can't we just get a picture? I want a picture of what it looks like. Well, let's forget that. So let's try and do this, right? I wanna, as we're talking about what seems to be a sort of war footing, and the reason for that war footing would be justification for damages caused by doing gain of function research on these viruses that's causing all this chaos, right? So there was one thing that I wanted to look at, and I think Never. I'm not sure who. Project Depopulation. What's this? April 29th, 2020. I mean, look at these scumbags. Ugh, gross, right? And they should be in the grave already. And the fact that these people... So, Zenodo.org. So, I don't know who Zenodo.org is, but this was, I guess, a published paper. And what's the International Journal of Research? Luc Montagnier. He's the AIDS dude. So let's have a look at this, right? And then, right? Once we understand the implications of this, okay? Because this is a big thing to wrap your head around. The government structures that are essentially your masters, right? Because you have to, no matter where or what you're doing, you're gonna pay them some tax, right? They're gonna pilfer from you, and these entities, because of damages, are gonna hold torts against China, and they will want damages in return. And it's already happened, right? Trump took TikTok from the Chinese, and I'm not sure how that works. I mean, what has he just seized their offices in the United States and their intellectual property? I mean, you know, if news like that is just passing you by and you're not paying much attention to it, you need to wake up to these facts, okay? And the implications for what it means to going on to a war footing. Forget about the billionaire depopulation, and of course they'd love a war, right? Of course they would love a war because that's a good way to depopulate. But us peons at the bottom, we have to worry about the impact of these entities, for want of a better description, that make up the bureaucracies of government, are going to engage in some form of combat to try and redress what they see as monetary grievance, usually. So anyway, let's read this abstract. So we are facing the worldwide invasion of a new coronavirus. Yes, this follows several limited outbreaks of related viruses in various locations in the recent past, SARS and MERS. Yes, we agree with that. Although the main current objective of researchers is to bring efficient therapeutic and preventative solutions to the global population, we need to also better understand the origin of the newly coronavirus-induced pandemic, in order to avoid future outbreaks. The present molecular appraisal is to study by a bioinformatic approach the facts relating to the virus and its precursors. This article shows how 16 fragments, ENV-POL and integrase genes from different strains, both diversified and very recent, of the HIV-1, HIV-2, and SIV, which is simian immunodeficiency virus retroviruses, have high percentage of homology into parts of the genome of COVID-19. Moreover, each of these elements is made of 18 or more nucleotides and therefore may have a function. They are called exogenous informative elements. Among these EIEs, 12 are concentrated in a very small region of the COVID-19 genome. Length less than 900 bases, i.e. less than 3% of the total length of this genome. In addition, these EIE are positioned in 2 functional genes of the COVID-19, so ORF1 is open reading frame 1, so that sort of makes up a lot of the functional proteins of the virus, and the S-spike genes. Here are the 2 main facts which contribute to our hypothesis of a partially synthetic genome. Right? Partially synthetic genome. That means gain of function, that means someone messed with it, and that means someone put in this. These would be gain of functions that are not there to be studying things like vaccines. Okay, it's there to induce some degree of potency and unpredictability. Now, there was another story, I don't think we really covered it, but there was a paper from Bristol University, I want to say, but basically they were saying that the body tries to mutate a virus to make it weak, and the SARS virus was basically able to change that, change this attack mechanism of the body and keep adapting, and this was it seemed to be quite a robust behavior of the virus to circumvent the immune response of individuals. I need to, if someone has a link to that paper, I'll be happy to go through it. But let's dig into this aspect of it's a synthetic gain of function element, and we did that. ORF1 spike genes. Here are the 2 main facts which contribute to our hypothesis of a partially synthetic genome. A contiguous region representing 2.49% of the whole COVID-19 genome, of which 40.99% is made up, I want to just round it up to 41%, tard, is made up of 12 diverse fragments originating from various strains of HIV, SIV retroviruses. Some of these EIE appear concatenated, so concatenated means joined together, so they string out. Notably, the retroviral part of these regions, which consists of 8 elements from various strains of HIV-1, HIV-2 and SIV, covers a length of 275 contiguous bases of COVID-19. The cumulus length of these HIV-SIV elements represents 200 bases. Consequently, the HIV-SIV density rate of this region of COVID-19, this seems bizarre stats, a major part of these 16 EIE already existed in the first SARS genomes as early as 2003. Interesting. However, we demonstrate how a new region, including 4 HIV-1, HIV-2, exogenous, informative elements, radically distinguishes all COVID-19 strains from all SARS and BAT strains, with the exception of BAT RAT-G13. Why do I always call it RAT-GC? Anyway, RAT-G13. We gather facts about the possible origins of COVID-19. We have particularly analysed this small region of 225 bases common to COVID-19 and BAT RAT-G13. We have included the most recent... so basically what we can say from this, this is a different region to that PRRA repeat. PRRA? Where do you go? Of course, PowerPoint closed down because of power cut. Thank you. Thank you, electricity. Anyway, the rabies-like nicotinic antagonist. So, on sampling genomes, we show that this 225 bases key region of each genome rich in EIE and that the 1770 bases spike region evolve much faster than the corresponding whole genome. Cases of 44 patients and genomes from Washington, Seattle state, original epicenter in the USA, and where the zombies are accumulating in Portland. Too funny. In the comparative analysis of spikes genes of COVID-19 and BAT RAT-G13, we note 2 abnormal facts. The insertion of 4 contiguous, it is the PRRA amino acids in the middle of spike. We showed that this site was already an optimal cleavage site before this insertion. An abnormal distribution of synonymous codons in the second half of spike. Finally, we show the insertion in this 1770 base spike region of a significant pair of EIEs from Plasmodium ueli, and of possible HIV-1 EIE with a crucial spike mutation. Hark, that's some abstract to wrap your tongue around. Let's just see if we can pull something out of this that is somewhat informative. Lots of tables. I always say if a paper has unnecessary 3D component to it with a graph from Excel, it usually means it's not a very good paper. So let's see what we have here. So to summarize, a contiguous region representing 2.49% of the whole COVID-19 genome is 40.99% made up of 12 diverse EIE originating from various strains of HIV-SIV retroviruses. So can we find our PRRP receipt? So figure 2, summary chart of 8 HIV-SIV EIE from region B. This summary chart demonstrating how 200 bases from various HIV-SIV retroviral strains within a concentrated 275 bases COVID-19 contig have a density rate equal to 72.73%. And boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I mean, I'm out. I'm in the deep end of the pool with this stuff. It's not neuroscience. So I mean, I don't know. So what do we do when we have a paper? First off, let's find out about our particular paper. This is International Journal of Research, and I have a feeling, looking at this, Jean-Claude Perret, Luc Montagnier, I've got a feeling the impact factor is going to be low. Free impact factor of free. It's not world shaking, but Journal of Neurophysiology, which is, I have many publications in there, but it's considered like the standard for neuroscience and biology, and it's a long-standing journal. So even if its impact factor is low, it's around this 3.3. The pedigree is far. So seems neurological or lack of zinc. Anosmia, Kristin, is neurological. I would wager, as well as hearing and taste. The axons are just dying. That's what's happened. That's what happens in the anosmia. So Luc Montagnier is a Nobel Prize-winning scientist. I do think he's into some woo factors as he's got older, but he knows a lot more about genes than I do, right? For sure. And if he's sticking his neck out and going with that, this is an artificial virus of some kind. It's a gain-of-function element that's been pushed onto the world either by accident or by foul play. Then there are going to be global consequences, right? And we're already seeing them, right? So the economies of countries have collapsed, right? The US, the UK, their economies have imploded, okay? So in history tells us that in these particular conditions, we inching towards war. And this didn't happen in the Cold War, okay? These types of triggers, okay? And okay, you can argue that the Cold War came off the back of the mass slaughter of the Second World War and the post-Second World War rape of Eastern Europe by the Russians, which is a story that you don't hear very often. But the Soviets brutalized German, particularly the women, after the peace had been signed, and during the fighting as well. It's the largest mass rape on record, I think. So I'll just confirm that as well. I don't know. Maybe the Hamilton Ackies in the UK give them a Soviet Germany. So Anthony Beauvoir describes it as the greatest phenomenon of mass rape in history, and has concluded that at least 1.4 million women were raped in East Prussia, Pomerania, and Silesia alone, according to Soviet war correspondent Natalie Gessi. Soviet soldiers raped German females from 8 to 80 years old. Dang, man. Things can get much worse, right? If the countries destabilize enough that they feel that they want to go to war, and already there's multiple red lines have been crossed, right? So if we're looking at an agent that's got HIV in it and this nicotinic rabies antagonist component, okay, and I didn't really get that it was a retrovirus per se from that paper, but I mean it probably accounts for some of the binding to blood cells as well, but so does the nicotinic receptor. The the consequences, like this isn't going to be sorted out by the equivalent of the League of Nations, which is the UN today. Okay, so the UN has essentially become useless. It's essentially a mouthpiece for the globalists and the Chinese anyway, and there's going to be no recourse to countries through the current infrastructure that's in place. So they might just, have to say, well, we have to go to war to get our damages back. We've been damaged, and that's what happens, right? Someone comes and punches you in the face, you punch back, right? And you punch them back harder, and you make sure that you win, right? That's the whole thing. So let's go to YouTube, and I wanted to put this into the context. So let's think about what they're doing with saying, okay, you got to shut down. Essentially, there's something in your environment that you need to get a handle on, and the civil defense aspect is critical, and you have to train that into people, and it's been lost because since the Berlin Wall fell down and everyone's jumped on the global homo party train, we've become soft is a way of UK nuclear war preparations. But you used to get sort of five. Yeah, here's a good one, right? Well, I want just the advert itself. Yeah, so this is the UK Protect and Survive in the event of a nuclear war. And the whole point of this civil defense at the time was people need to get into their homes, and military was trained to shoot looters, okay, because they couldn't afford to have chaos on the streets.
A warning may come quite unexpectedly. We will now tell you what to do if a warning sounds when you are at home, and then we will explain what to do if you are out of doors. First, if you are at home, if attack is imminent, you will hear the attack sound like this. So take cover at once. Send your young children to the fallout room, then go quickly and turn off the gas and the electricity at the mains. Close down stoves. Damp down fires. Shut windows. And draw curtains. Then go to your fallout room and stay there. If the fallout warning sounds are heard, they will be like these. You should now move yourself and your family to the safest area in your fallout room. That is, you should get inside your inner refuge and stay there. After 2 days, the danger from fallout will get less, but don't take any risks by contact with it. The longer you stay in your refuge, the better it will be for you. Listen to your radio. Stay where you are and keep listening to your radio. Now, this is what you should do if you are out of doors when the warning sounds. Take cover at once when you hear the attack sound. If you cannot reach home in 10 minutes, take cover in the nearest building. If there is no building nearby, try to find some solid cover. If there is no solid cover, lie flat in a ditch or a hole and cover your head, face, and hands as fast as you can with some of your clothes. If you hear the fallout warning, seek the nearest and best cover as quickly as you can. But before entering the building or cover, brush or shake off any fallout dust you may have picked up and get rid of it. Change your outer clothing if you can. Stay under cover. When the all clear sounds, like this, it means that you are safe from attack or fallout for the time being, and that you can go out again. But keep listening for further warnings, or to your radio for further advice.
I mean, I was a kid when this used to play on the TV, right? And it would come on pretty regular. And you know, my father was Air Force, and he was part of the QRF for the strike, the ability to project nuclear deterrent. And so I remember being terrified as a child of nuclear bombs. That's what I remember. I remember having nightmares about nuclear missiles. So you know, it is traumatizing. And you know, my kids ask me about what's coronavirus, etc., and I tell them it's nothing, right? I don't want them worrying, and there's nothing they can do. And you know, like I say, I've taken the decision that the children will go back to school because I think the odds are in their favor that it should be okay. And you cannot get away from it now because it's in the environment. It's spread, and you have to come into contact with it somehow. The strategy is to minimize that contact, right? So you don't get overwhelmed. So let me just read the comments, and maybe I saw one step in here. How you doing, sir? I haven't seen you in a while. Let's see. I missed it. Where does it say peer reviewed? The fact that it's a published journal, Marie, tells you that it's been peer reviewed. Coke can destroy tissue in the nose. Yep. Something we have all suspected anyway. Yeah, they spread it up with their stealth bug. I don't know why they don't go look a little closer at the virus creator, Ralph Barrick of UNC. Yeah, I know. They probably are, to tell the truth. And I think that's why Charles Lieber's been arrested. And it might just be the fact that Ralph Barrick is cooperating and probably saying, okay, this might be a big deal, right? If you've got, you know, I know he's shifted over into the well, he's gone a bit wacky as he's got older, Luc Montagnier, but he holds the Nobel Prize for finding the AIDS virus. Okay, it would be very, very difficult for me to pick apart what he's saying because that science is outside my area of expertise. And what I can do is I can say, does it seem logical and coherent? And I've seen enough evidence in these papers now. So there was the early review in France from the French group. There was the paper from Baha Lab in Pittsburgh University. There was the modeling, atomic force modeling from Bristol University, which identified the nicotinergic binding site. And that's enough data for me, even if the peer review process has only been passed, it seems, for two of those. Okay, for me as a scientist to say to the public that are listening, there are multiple attack vectors that this virus will take. Okay, the ACE2 one, everyone knows about that. Everyone's become an expert in that. But this nicotinergic property is a big deal. Okay, and that's, like I say, we've gone through this in a lot of detail, how the cholinergic component is involved in your immune response. It's involved in the coagulation, and all these are big factors that make up the clinical profile of what SARS does and is. So anyway, I'm pretty sure they are speaking with Barrack Lab. It was bad. Oh fuck yeah, dude. You rarely hear the losers' stories. Yeah, he who wins writes the history. The camera is time for bed. Yeah, it's a mouthpiece, alright. Behind Bill Gates. The Japanese just did it for fun. I'm not sure what this is about. Does that to me too, Marie. I like these earlier streams. It was transmissible to human airway cells without the need for intermediary hosts. Yeah, so this is what we know. There isn't this zoonotic pathway that the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2, the paper in Nature, tried to argue. Where's the intermediate? And what do we have come out in the last few weeks? MIT say that what they found in the pangolin is probably human to pangolin transmission, not the other way around. Evidence in science tends to be a sort of salami type approach. Okay, so little bits get sliced off the problem and they get analyzed and built up, and there's enough evidence right now to say it was gain of function. These gain of functions are not something to do with trying to find a vaccine. Okay, if it's got these extra properties in, and if we look at the our PowerPoint, let's bring that over here. And so this, I need to update this. I said I was going to do update and small videos. I just don't find the time. So this, right, the PRRA repeat, this thing here, okay, this is all the other closely related viruses. So if we looked at the phylogenetic tree, so all these viruses around here, none of them, right, and already the furin cleavage site is a big issue, but now that we have the furin cleavage site and we have this rabies component, this cholinergic antagonism, this is a big problem, and this builds up to the case for, you've got a case of casus belli. And when the President Trump is saying, oh, you're not going to see me for a while, it might just mean that they're on a war footing, a major war footing. And let's not forget the data that Semper gave us last week, which was that the United States Marines, for the first time in their history, have been authorized to deploy on US soil. What's that telling you? Well, it's telling you that the United States has been infiltrated heavily by suspected combatants, okay? And they will, if as a US citizen you think with your Second Amendment right you're going to take on the US Marine Corps, that ain't happening. And it doesn't matter how big your little militia is, right? They will pick you off from miles away, right? With not even thinking about it. Any military unit, if it comes under fire, will return fire and squash whatever it is that's being done. And if the gloves come off and they're not playing soft like they did in Afghanistan and the Middle East, yeah, it could get real nasty. So I've lost my pop-up again. Bring that up. So yeah, sleep well, Marie. Jump on the train, Kevin. Use the back door. Which train, dude? I'm not going on any trains. My freedoms will work. beating it is as important, if not more so, than where it came from through Emmett. Look, and I would say right now, it's a moot point discussing the intricacies of it was Bill Gates' pandemic. It was, all these oligarchs. It was a shift or punt towards trying to make the Belt and Road project come off, and the Middle East act as a hub for trade from China. And there's an element to so China was looking to invest in Lebanon's port, right? And suddenly that port's gone. What other port were they thinking of using? Haifa in Israel. Okay, Haifa's port is still active. So what are the Chinese going to do? Build a brand new port in Lebanon, or use Haifa and Israel? And we already know that Israel is doing a lot of back channel stuff with China that caused Pompeo to go and read the Riot Act to the Israelis. And we don't know how that's going to plan out. I think history is a good indicator of how that pans out when people think that our greatest ally in the Middle East has been poisoning the wells. It tends not to end too well. So a lot of the trains you down there take there. That means duck and cover. Yeah, man, and that's what I'm saying. Look, if you wanted to game theory this, right, which is what we're trying to do, because we're trying to look at all these elements and try to come to something of a consensus that's coherent, so that you and your family are better looked after. So one, you're not engaging with zombie hordes in Portland or Minnesota or anywhere else that these freaks are appearing. And two, you're thinking about what does it mean if supply lines get disrupted and you're being made to stay in your house or apartment, okay? And these runs or these attempts at lockdowns might be them saying, okay, this agent, whether it was deliberate or not, has crossed the boundaries. We're into some next gen warfare. We have to make the people understand what a lockdown means. So the first few months or weeks, you probably realized what you did and didn't need when the lockdowns were in place. So the next time, if something more dangerous comes over the horizon, you're going to be better placed, because the civil defense posture, like you saw in the UK, there wasn't mass shelters that you could go to, okay, with big blast doors in the sides of mountains. There was just a calculation made that there were going to be areas outside the blast zones that would survive. And in that sort of with that sort of strategic mentality, okay, you just become another number, another little box to tick, okay, and it's the luck of the draw where you end up. And if you're in that house and you have to survive, what we should do is we should just have a stream of watching Freds, because I think the movie Freds is the best movie about what it means to be involved with next-gen warfare as opposed to Sherman tanks and I don't know, Tommy guns for the Second World War, and storming the beaches in cotton fatigues. It didn't appear that my comments were going through because they weren't showing up on my TV screen. Excuse me, damn. I can see your comments, Emmett. So, Dave Job Boomer is now the newsy gen. The first thing I thought about the lockup was a war was about to start, and clearing the roads and airspace freed it up for military movement unimpeded. Yeah, right? And like I say, all these little indicators, okay, like the US Marine Corps being given license to deploy on the United States. April 4th, General Mike Milley standing up in front of the United States and saying to people, if you think you're going to get by the US Defense Forces, the US military, whilst we're trying to deal with the chaos of this agent, you're not going to get very far, okay? And, you know, if it's manifesting as this civil unrest, which, you know, is an obvious tactic to be used by Marxist infiltrators, okay? They have their idea about what makes a just society, and they're prepared to break a few eggs to make it. And for sure as shit, as we support groups that align with our ideological leanings around the world, these Marxist groups in the US and Europe are funded heavily as well. And I think we're in uncharted waters, because there's no way you can spoof every lab in the world that would deal with these viruses. And if I can pick out the emergent neurological behaviors straight away, it tells you something is going on, right? It's not a fake virus, and it might, like I say, if we know that the US military forces took a hit with this virus, right? So with the Pacific Fleet was pulled back to Japan and Guam, okay? And we know that the spread probably started prior to the Wuhan Games, okay? So someone has made an attempt to degrade the forces of each of these countries, because those forces go back, they mix in barracks, and it spreads through the regiments and the military infrastructure. Now, think about it this way. What they've done is so, you know, there's a threshold where the individual becomes a casualty, and those asymptomatics, because of the spinal analgesia mechanisms, are now pushed that bit closer to the breaking point that would be a casualty. So, you know, they might not be able to handle the shell shock, etc., of blasts going on around them. The nervous system is that much closer to failure, and boom, you've taken out more and more forces, and those forces require treatment, right? Because we have this contract written with the people that go to fight for us, that no man gets left behind, right? And we will do what we can to pull that person off the battlefield, get them the medical help that they need, right? Otherwise the modern volunteer military force doesn't work in principle. It fails if that element is not there. And now we're potentially in a situation where this virus has ripped through the population, okay? The asymptomatic component has impacted on the brain, and like I say, we're now in a situation where you're compromised when the fighting comes down, and China already vaccinated 2 million of its standing army. They didn't waste any time. And so I would just be be careful about what it is. You know, even the information that I'm telling you, take it, put it against what else that you're seeing, other groups that are discussing what's going on, and see what passes out and makes the most sense. Okay, and I'll sort of wrap up and make a conclusion, because I think I've sort of ran through what I wanted to say.
More now on the alarming.
So if I've missed something, I'll come back to it. And I also think I want to do a stream where we just watch threads, or I can't remember the day after was the American one. But I think threads is a better nuclear war movie, and there's a few others that you can watch that are about the civil defence component to it. And there's a really good UK black and white one that is almost as good as Fred's with respect to how they would respond with nuclear war film. And there's good documentaries actually that come from the time. So there's Fred's obviously, and can we see it? When the Wind Blows. Oh my god, that takes me back. On the 8th day. I think I've seen that one. Oh, where are you? I think it might be this one. Let's just check this. Not
you will no doubt have seen, even if you have not studied, Civil Defence Handbook number 10, entitled Advising the Householder on Protection Against Nuclear Attack. In order to illustrate the contents of this handbook more graphically, the civil defence authorities have produced 7 short films based on the 7 sections that form the contents of the handbook. If the government decide that the time has come for this advice to be acted upon, these films will be shown to the public on all television networks. Their present purpose, however, is for your information. So we shall now show the 7 films as one film. Here we go. The government has decided that in the present state of international tension, you should be told how best to protect yourselves from the dangerous effects of nuclear attack. If this tension should lead to war, it is essential that you shall have taken every possible precaution to safeguard your family, yourself, and your home. This film will show what are the dangers to expect and the best means of protection. First, the basic facts. When a nuclear weapon explodes, it produces 3 main hazards. The first of these comes from the heat generated by the fireball. This may last as long as 20 seconds. The heat is so great that for some miles around the explosion, it could kill people who are caught in the open, and it could burn exposed skin over a much wider area. The heat also threatens your home. By striking through unprotected windows, it would start fires across the whole area. The second danger is from blast. For some miles, buildings will be destroyed or severely damaged. Further out, buildings will suffer less severe damage as the blast effect diminishes. And for many miles beyond that, there will be light damage, such as broken windows. The third danger is from fallout. If the bomb explodes on or near the ground, dust is sucked up by the explosion and is made radioactive in the rising fireball. It rises high in the air and is then carried downwind, falling slowly to earth over an area which may be hundreds of miles long and tens of miles wide. Within this area, everything in the open would become covered with a film of radioactive dust. This fallout dust gives off radiation, rather like X-rays. Radiation cannot be seen, felt, heard, or smelt, but exposure to radiation can cause sickness and death. The radiation is at its greatest intensity during the first 2 days, but the danger decreases rapidly as time passes. After 2 days, it is 100 times less harmful than at first. But even then, it is still dangerous. These then are the dangers that may face all of us: heat, blast, and fallout. In the other sections of this film, you will be shown what precautions will help to protect you from these dangers.
Don't go looting, you'll get shot.
To obtain protection against fallout, and as far as possible against heat and blast, you should now select and fortify a room in which to shelter, both during the attack and during the period of intense radiation that may follow. The penetration of harmful radiation is cut down by heavy and dense materials such as brick, concrete, and earth. The more, therefore, of these materials you can put between yourself and the fallout, the greater the protection you will obtain. The fallout will not get inside a house that has its windows and doors shut and has not been damaged by the blast, but it will settle on the roof and around the house. It is the radiation from this external fallout that endangers anyone inside. Now the choice of a fallout room. A basement or a cellar will give you the best protection and is the most suitable as a fallout room. Many houses
actually, if we're doing a documentary, so I remember watching this one as a kid. It was called QED, half an hour documentary to Armageddon, war facts from the 1980s. This is the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, so it gives a sort of more, yeah. It's a great one. Hey, QED made me become a scientist, right? It was this and Horizon.
The human body is a fragile thing. At speeds of more than 8 miles an hour, an impact with a hard surface can cause leg and ankle fractures. A skin temperature above 70 degrees centigrade will produce serious burns in less than a second. Large fragments of broken glass traveling at more than 35 miles an hour will penetrate and lacerate the skin. Acute exposure to radiation will produce bleeding, loss of hair, and loss of white blood cells.
I love the ominous...
All these effects are produced by a nuclear weapon. Could we survive?
When this came out, I think I was probably about 10 years old maybe. And I can remember this being on TV, man. I was terrified.
Suppose, a mile above the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, on a clear morning, a single 1 megaton weapon explodes.
Which is a small weapon.
This film is about what happens to a city, any city, underneath such an explosion.
Look what they took from us, folks. Look what they took. Today it would all be hijabis and...
shelter from a nuclear weapon. Would we survive its 3 main effects? At the instant of detonation, the temperature of a nuclear fireball is 20 million degrees, as hot as the center of the sun. This is the first effect, a pulse of intense heat and light. Across large areas of central London, People and objects burst into flames, melt or... If we freeze time at the exact instant of the explosion, these are the effects of the heat alone in different parts of the city. At St. Paul's itself, ground zero, directly under the fireball...
Yeah, I love this
the
old
initial
shit
heat
too.
is
One
intense
step.
enough
It's
to melt
great.
the great bronze cross. It vaporizes the liquid metal as it runs down the dome. It melts the stained glass windows and ignites objects inside the cathedral. Trafalgar Square, the National Gallery. Inside, at the same instant, paintings are burning. In St. James's Park, the same thermal rays are hot enough to ignite trees and scorch away the grass. In the shallower parts of the lake, the water boils to leave the lake bed dry and steaming. The temperature is around 4,000 degrees. In precise terms, the heat energy at this distance is 350 calories per square centimeter. That is enough to vaporize the road surface, melt parts of statues, and set fire to everything combustible. Around Battersea Power Station and Battersea Dogs Home in South London, the heat from the fireball will ignite the upholstery and rubber tires of cars and their petrol tanks. It will melt the sheet metal of buses. In the first seconds of a nuclear explosion, many vehicles will catch fire in streets exposed to the direct flash. In the same streets, window frames and doors will char or burn. This will happen from Chalk Farm to Camberwell. The heat rays, like light, travel in straight lines. Areas in shadow are not affected. In this Battersea street, any window from which the fireball is visible will admit the heat rays into the inside of the house. At this radius, around 4 miles, they will pass through the glass and ignite most flammable things they touch. What is the effect of this incredible heat on people caught by it? Everywhere inside
Barbecue.
this 7-mile radius, for example at the shops in Holland Park Avenue, the effect on directly exposed flesh is the same. It behaves like the meat in the butcher's window. Animal fats melt and burn. Tissues are charred to black carbon. This is at 4.5 miles. The temperature is around 1800 degrees.
Holy fuck, man.
Only at the fringes of
But
this area,
you keep worrying about that 5G,
do the
folks.
burns become treatable. At the lawn tennis ground, the heat scorches plywood. This makeup shows what it does to flesh. A 3rd-degree burn through the full thickness of the skin looks like this. It requires extensive skin grafts. A mile further out still, Kew Gardens, over 8.5 miles from St. Paul's. The initial burst of heat here will melt a raincoat. On the human face, it produces severe 2nd-degree burns with blistering of the skin. Even at 11 miles out, here at Twickenham Rugby Ground, the flash will permanently damage the eyesight of anyone looking directly at the fireball. Because of the eye's focusing action, severe burning and possible hemorrhage of the retina are possible.
My eyes!
At Hampton Court Palace, some of these tourists will receive the equivalent of a severe sunburn. Notice the shielding effect of clothing. As everywhere, only the exposed skin is affected. The area covered by the hat isn't burnt. At the same radius, around 12 to 13 miles, even indirect light from the fireball will cause temporary blindness, lasting from 10 seconds to several minutes. All these effects have happened in the first 3 seconds of one megaton explosion. Many people will be completely shielded, even quite close to ground zero. However, up to 650,000 people will have suffered major burns from the fireball in these first few seconds. Three seconds after the detonation, a mile above the cathedral, the blast wave arrives. It is as if St. Paul's was smashed by a giant million-ton fist. At enormous pressures, and with winds up to 2,000 miles an hour, the blast wave spreads outwards, following the heat flash as thunder follows lightning. Within 20 seconds, the destruction as far as Bayswater is virtually total.
And Omniversing is right. We should not forget the incoming alien invasion.
Within this area, many reinforced concrete buildings are leveled. Factories and commercial buildings collapse. Some tower blocks fall.
1 million vaporized instantly is generous estimation.
Even further out, ordinary brick houses are hit by the blast.
I don't know, man. Like over central London, I mean, there's 10 million people in.
The effect on houses over an area of more than 50 square miles.
I don't know. Why was Emmett Julian timed out?
On the unprotected human body. The major injuries come from the secondary effects of blast, impact with flying debris and solid walls. As far as Walthamstow or Hampstead, people can be carried by winds of 150 miles an hour and thrown against buildings. Arm and leg fractures are likely, with a high proportion of skull injuries. Closer in, the pressure itself may even rupture the lungs and burst the eardrums. However, the most widespread injuries are from flying glass. As the pressure wave sweeps outwards from St. Paul's, it shatters and bursts every window in the city, from the M4 services near Heathrow to Hornchurch in Essex, an area of 500 square miles. This is what flying glass can do to a pumpkin. There are 600,000 people in this royal wedding crowd, stretching all the way back to Trafalgar Square. All the people you can see, plus another 250,000, will die immediately from the blast. 1.5 million more will be seriously injured. The immediate effects of even a single weapon are awesome. What can city dwellers do to protect themselves? We shall look firstly at the options open to a couple living in the North London suburb of Finsbury Park. Their street is between 3 and 4 miles from St. Paul's, mainly Edwardian terraced houses. Joy and Eric live at the southern end. He's a musician. She works for a bank. What could they do for protection? The Home Office published this pamphlet, Protect and Survive, in May 1980. Most of the booklet tells you how to shelter from the fallout that may follow an attack. There's little on how to deal with the immediate effects. However, there is advice on fire prevention. Newspapers and other combustibles should be thrown away. Buckets of water should be kept handy for putting out fires. and windows should be whitewashed to reflect the heat flash.
Oh god, I mean, I can remember the leaflet. We used to get leaflets through the door as well.
The remaining advice is how to shield an inner room from fallout, and how to build a refuge within that room. These preparations took all day. There was a problem in finding enough heavy materials for the necessary shielding. There was no advice on blast protection. How would they survive at 3 1/4 miles? As far as heat is concerned, quite well. Although the paint on the windows will burn, the whitewash keeps 80% of the heat out.
Alright guys, whitewash those windows.
There are fires in unprotected houses nearby, but Joy and Eric should survive, at least for 17 seconds. After that, the blast demolishes their terrace of houses. There's no guarantee that these measures would protect you from blast if you were much closer than 6 to 8 miles from ground zero. However, as we'll see, any shelters that survive further away can still be effective against fallout. A second Home Office booklet was published early in 1981.
God,
it
I remember
deals with
it.
more elaborate shelters. None of them are last-minute affairs. Type 1 is for digging out doors in a time of international crisis. You need quite a large garden. It has to be well away from buildings and large trees to avoid falling debris. Many London gardens will not be big enough to satisfy this requirement. It's a shallow 18-inch trench with built-up earth walls, held in place initially with wooden doors. These are later used for the roof. It's suggested that all this timber, doors, planks, braces, should come from cannibalizing your own house. But would people really start removing doors unless they were certain an attack was coming? At the end of the first day's digging, the trench started to fill with water. By the following morning, this had happened.
Well, at least I got water to drink.
Look at this. It's filled up. Oh. The local water table was about a foot below the surface. There were 8 inches of water to be bailed out. They persevered, although in practice the continuous flooding would have made their shelter uninhabitable. The next problem would have been especially difficult for those with small gardens. The earth excavated from the shelter was only a fraction of that needed to cover it. In fact, an additional 4.5 tons had to be Luckily, the ground wasn't frozen. There were no underground sewage pipes or conduits in the way, and the couple had the necessary time to build it. It's not known in practice how much, if any, warning would be given for shelter building. Building this took the equivalent of a long, hard weekend for two. The total cost of materials, not including the extra soil, was about £200. How does such a structure withstand heat and blast? The earth cover stands up to heat very well, although any exposed wood may be charred. However, the blast pressure at this range is 4 times what the shelter's designed for. So it wouldn't protect this couple from the immediate effects. In this kind of shelter, they'd need to be at least 5 or 6 miles away for proper blast protection. The booklet has another design that's more resistant to blast. It's a kit of parts, obtained in peacetime and assembled in a crisis. It's designed for indoors, for a basement or ground floor room. When it's put
Anderson
together,
shelter.
it's very like the World War II Morrison shelter.
Morrison shelter.
The steel frame took several hours. Then the fallout shielding, layers of bricks. This took most of a day. Total cost with bricks, £800 to £1,200. It's claimed that it will withstand a 2-story house collapsing on top of it. But although the shelter itself survives at 3 miles, it's right in the center of the fire zone. This is the area where almost everything that will burn is on fire, even after the blast. The fires burn up available oxygen. Inside your shelter, you might not only be roasted, but suffocated. For this reason alone, the shelter is unsatisfactory unless it's at least 4.5 to 5 miles away. And even then, there may be no one to dig you out. From here on, the options take increasing amounts of time and money. There are now about 30 firms who will sell and install for you a purpose-built nuclear shelter in any combination of steel, fiberglass, and concrete. The amount you pay depends on size, sophistication, and level of comfort.
I can remember these ads as well.
£20,000. Even with a second mortgage or cost sharing, they're probably beyond the range of all but a fraction of the population.
The plebs have to burn.
It's a buried steel tube and costs about £10,000. Inside, it's about 15 feet long, and there's space for 5 to 7 people to live in moderate comfort, supported by an air filtration system. This is pumped by a hand crank. There's ample storage space and running water from a self-contained tank. A lavatory flushes the waste into an underground pit. The blast proofing in most shelters will withstand 1 to 3 atmospheres of overpressure. Here, it's 3 atmospheres. The whole thing's buried under 6 feet of earth and takes about a week to install and equip.
I don't know when we're going to make the Raccoon Town do.
You're in it, not outside when the bomb goes off. There's also the question of neighbors. You may be the only one in your area with a shelter. Are you prepared to use force to keep others out?
Yes.
And will you be safe? Blast damage overhead leaves Joy and Eric a little shaken, but otherwise they're protected from the explosion. They could survive the blast even closer in, 1.5 miles to a mile. But even where they are, there's still the suffocation problem. However, if they invested several more thousand on an oxygen-making unit, they'd overcome this danger too. For complete protection here, they'll have paid around £15,000.
Yeah, I mean, you could buy whole houses back then for that much.
Safe, that is, from the immediate effects of a 1 megaton airburst at St. Paul's. All this destruction was the result of a single warhead, but a single warhead is unlikely. For an all-out attack on the London region, this is a realistic scenario. Up to 30 large weapons, many exploding in the central area. Amidst this incredible destruction, a further nightmare. Over a third explode on the ground. These make fallout. When a fireball touches the ground, many tons of earth and debris are sucked up, vaporized, and made highly radioactive. This is fallout. Starting within hours after the explosion and continuing for days or weeks, this lethal dust drops out of the cloud as it's blown by the wind. Areas hundreds of miles away can be affected. It is invisible and deadly for at least 2 weeks. The radiation from this dust damages and kills living cells. These are some of the symptoms after a large dose, 1,000 rads. Within 30 minutes, nausea, tiredness, diarrhea, vomiting. After 2 weeks, loss of hair.
Sounds like SARS, right?
After 3 weeks, bleeding from the gums and all orifices, skin hemorrhages. Within 3 months, pain, delirium, and probably death.
Very much like SARS.
A shattered inner city offers little protection from this dust or shielding from its intense radiation. Even an undamaged house is insufficient shelter. However, if they're properly built and shielded, all 3 of the do-it-yourself shelters could make a life-saving difference in areas that weren't affected by blast, away from the center. Under their thick earth shielding, Joy and Eric are safe much further in. Their Swiss-designed pump filters the dust from the air supply, although it does need cranking for 15 minutes every hour. They will have bought over 2,000 times as much shielding as most other people. Not all will be as secure. For most city dwellers, survival depends as much on luck as on foresight. Would West London, for example, really be in a safety zone, or flattened by blast, or hit by fallout? All are possible. Kenneth and Elizabeth live in Shepherd's Bush. He's in the building trade. They've been married for 7 years.
Wait, they're the wrong colour.
Looking like this after a major attack are high. If they survived such an attack, they could still shelter from fallout if they'd previously dug a trench like Joy and Eric's in the garden. We asked them to dig one and to stay down in it for nearly 2 weeks, entirely cut off from the outside world. For a 2-week shelter, these are the recommended rations, about 50 pounds worth. Inside, these are the conditions they took on. And this is the sanitation, a bucket and chair. They decided right away to sacrifice the chair for the extra few inches of room. The shelter was 36 inches wide. Oh. Organizing the tiny space was a nightmare, even in this well-lit experiment. I'm hoping to do it. Bad as these conditions were, what would they be like after a real nuclear blast? Could you imagine yourself in here? The confusion, the disorientation. In such a situation, you would have to face much that was totally alien to you. As you tried to sleep on the hard floor, for example, would you find it possible to forget the destruction you'd seen as you scrambled into the shelter? Would you have been able to find all your family in time? Your children? Would your house still be standing outside? Would you be injured?
2-week lockdown like SARS, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The washing facilities in the shelter are
it's Mint's condition of entry. Yeah, you gotta have mints for entry.
Would you know
that's a prerequisite.
Could you remove broken glass from cuts if you had to? Could you prevent infection? After 5 days, halfway through the trial, Kenneth described conditions in his shelter.
Good morning, gentlemen.
She's smoking a ciggy.
Afternoon. Hasn't been a very good night. This morning, both very tired, very little sleep.
Yeah, she's smoking.
Otherwise, things are going fine. I'm slightly stiff and a slight touch of a cold, but otherwise, I'm fine.
Imagine the sanitation in a real emergency.
They're both smoking.
The first symptoms of radiation sickness and the symptoms of panic are almost the same. How would you cope in this confined space for 2 weeks with vomiting and diarrhea? There would be many such uncertainties. Above all, what would be outside? Even though you knew it might be radioactive and deadly, could you resist the temptation to go out and look? And when you finally did,
yeah, protecting herself from SARS, good one. How much sex did they have? There's not much else to do, right?
Or a wasteland for which little in your experience had prepared you. After an all-out attack, how much of that complex world you now take for granted would still be there? Sanitation, water supply, high technology medicine, doctors, electricity. What kind of communications? Who would tell you the extent of what's happened? How would you travel?
Oh, that's actually an image from the Blitz in London. That's the Second World War. And, you know, don't think that striking cities is out the realm of possibility. Because when the gloves come off, that's what they do. Right? And, you know, that was a lesson learned from the Second World War, that you degrade your enemy, not so much on the battlefield, of course that's important, but you try to degrade the infrastructure that they have that enables them to fight the war. And hence you had blitzing campaigns. And the Royal Air Force flattened German cities, most famous ones being Dresden. And it was tit for tat in these conditions, right? And people still lived in the city in that respect. But back then there was this better the society was more cohesive because it was a indigenous type society. Immigration hadn't taken hold. The little Bantustans and Balkanization hadn't occurred to the cities. Okay, and now you're dealing with something completely different. And, you know, so I'm going to sort of end this stream with the fact that we are seeing, and I've said this before, the contradictions, like the Soviet Union collapse. We're seeing the contradictions of the Western system come under these strains, and the contradictions of this free movement of capital and the free movement of people, and being the best system in which to raise the living standards of all people. And it might just be the case that as the pressure of next generation warfare hits home on your doorstep, the communities that would have been available 30, 40, 50 years ago aren't there anymore. The fabric has broken down. So like you're seeing very much in the United States right now. And if this, like I say, I think the evidence is overwhelming for there being a neural aspect to this that's driving a lot of people to the edge. That could have been a factor in the design of these agents. So we'll finish this out and then I'm gonna hop off. So yeah,
Where would you go to find food?
These are Blitz images.
Would the social fabric still be there?
No.
Would anything? When after 2 weeks you crawl out of your trench or your concrete bunker, it could be that your real problems will just be beginning.
Yeah, so I can remember that being broadcast, and I'll try and catch up with the comments, and I'll try and find. We'll watch some of these movies, etc. When AZ Infidel says Google nuclear war survival skills. You can either read it online or download the PDF. It's everything you need to know how to survive a nuclear conflict. Yeah, I mean, it takes resources, it takes luck of the draw, and the thing is, if you had kids, like, would I want to be surviving? You know, if I was in like an area of destruction. So we can sort of make a quick calculation, right? So I live in Nagoya. The standard Ching Chong warhead is 5 megatons. Nuclear blast calculator. And you know when my father was doing, they used to have sort of dialer yield bombs, right? And okay, so it's sort of picked up pretty close to where I live. That looks like that's Tokyo, more like. So we want this is Nagoya. So let's say, can I put a marker there? I'll type the name of the city, Nagoya. Oops. Enter a yield, or you can, let's have the Chinese. Dongfeng, China's first deployed ICBM. I don't think that's their current one though. Current China, I said Dongfeng 5, ICBM 5 megatons. Okay, and let's have casualties. Let's have radio fallout, and we will do first off an airburst. Okay, and I live, let's see, around this region. Okay. One missile, airburst. Can we select height? Launch multiple. Yeah, no doubt it would be a multiple detonation. So, but let's do one. So it gives you the stats on the side here. So from one blast, what happened to our map? Come on. That's gay. Come on. Wait, we can read the casualties. 3 million, or nearly 4 million fatalities. That's the whole of the city, basically. 8 million, nearly 9 million estimated injuries. Modelling casualties from nuclear attack is difficult. These numbers should be seen as evocative, not definitive. So, fireball radius, 1.8 kilometers. Maximum size of the fireball, relevance to damage on the ground. I want the map, damn it. Oh, there we go. Now, you drag that over here. So, we'll put it dead center over Nagoya. Right? So, so I'm within the moderate blast damage radius for one warhead at the so that would be a 5 psi overpressure. Most residential buildings collapse. Injuries are universal, and Japanese houses are built like shit, man. They're wood, like they would just implode. Oh no, it's this. I would be in the light blast damage radius. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Well, anyway, anything within center of Nagoya gets flattened, I guess. And I would be around 1 psi overpressure. Glass windows can be expected to break. This can cause many injuries in the surrounding population, which comes to a window after seeing the flash of a nuclear explosion, which travels. The following errors were encountered trying to implement these settings. The blast pressure equation for 20 psi failed to give a result for the given yield and height settings. The maximum detonation height for this effect to be felt on the ground is 4.82 kilometers. The initial nuclear radiation equation for 500 rem failed to give a result for the given yield. Now, when I was growing up, there literally was, what's the closest that you would get? So you're probably East Germany. So from East Germany to the UK, I'm presuming they would have had missile batteries there. But, here's Japan, here's Xinjiang, China. Right? It's not very far away. And I don't think we'd get much of a warning. Were things to get out of hand. Well, then China's more here, but there is elements of China up here, and I can fly to South Korea in the time it takes me to take the train to Tokyo, 2 hours, right? No, it's less. Is it 2 hours? So, 2 hours if you include getting to the airport and out the airport. So, any missile that the Chinese have, so let's just check. So I knew it was a 5 megaton warhead, but Chinese ICBM. China unveils ICBM capable of reaching US with 10 warheads. Yeah. Which very much looks like the SS missiles of the Russians. So China flaunted rapid advances in its weapons technology. So this is just a few months ago in a military parade marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic on Tuesday, demonstrating progress towards its goal of becoming a military superpower on par with the US. Again, guys, this just falls into the premise that these lockdowns they're giving you are drills, right? That you're already under attack, and they're drilling into you what to do. Okay. Among the weaponry unveiled at the event, one of the largest such parades in modern Chinese history was the Dongfeng 41, a nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile that can carry up to 10 independent nuclear warheads, able to strike different targets, making it an exceedingly difficult threat to intercept. With a range of 12 to 15,000 kilometers, a DF-41 launched from a mobile platform in mainland China could reach the continental US. People's Liberation Army's nuclear capabilities have long been eclipsed by those of the US. Beijing held 290 nuclear warheads to Washington's 6,185. And this is low, right? I can remember before sort of Gorbachev and Reagan did the Reykjavik peace accords. I think like there were 10,000, 15,000 warheads, something like that. Really bizarre number anyway. The parade also sought to show off Beijing's rapid strides towards catching up with Washington in conventional warfare, with J-20 stealth fighter jets and H-6U aerial refueling tankers flying overhead. China has largely followed in the footsteps of the US in its military build-up, including with moves in recent years to restructure its discrete land, sea and air forces into a joint force with a regional command structure. This also goes for equipment. The J-20 is said to have developed using secret technology stolen, well, what a surprise, and probably funneled through our greatest ally in the Middle East. From the American military through hacking, 5 of the jets flew in formation at the parade, showing that mass production is underway. Yet many analysts in the US and Japan say it's impossible to tell how the jets actually compare to their American counterparts without seeing them in real combat. The performance of stealth fighters hinges on the capabilities of their engines, and much remains unclear about those of the J-20. The parade featured new technology seen as game changers for modern warfare. One example is the DF-17, a hypersonic weapon that can change its path after re-entering the atmosphere to evade American missile defense systems. The US and Russia are scrambling to develop similar weapons, but it's been speculated that China has beaten them to the punch. Yeah, interesting. I didn't know this. Beijing also displayed an array of unmanned vehicles, including sharp-sword stealth drones. The US makes heavy use of unmanned aircraft to strike terrorist targets, and China seeks to catch up using technology that would enable swarms of drones to act in concert. Other advances on display included electronic warfare vehicles capable of disrupting enemy communications, and a carrier-killer missile said to boast a highly precise targeting system. Views on the missile's actual performance are mixed, but if it's as accurate as some estimates suggest, it could restrict the ability of US carrier strike groups to act in the region in the event of a conflict. Like I say, people writing off the Chinese military and saying, America's got this with the rest of the world. There's over 1.5 billion Chinese, right? And the Chinese will just line them up and they'll just swarm you, right? Give each one of them 300 rounds and an AK-47, clear the way with their nuclear missiles, and they could take a lot of ground and cause a lot of disruption should they so desire. And I would put good money on the psychopathy of the communist regime, that if they feel that their internal control is being lost, they would go this direction. I have no doubt of that. I don't think there's a peaceful way to resolve this like there was with the Soviet Union. I would say the cultural differences are too large, and it was tried with trade and sort of opening up to the Chinese and giving favored trading status back when that was in the Clinton administration, I think. And the idea was that they would integrate into the world markets, and trade. The principle being that countries that trade together don't go to war against each other, but in that equation, somehow it got screwed over with this idea of libertarian, but capitalist systems wanting to go across borders to get the cheapest workforce, and so you've lost the US, Europe lost their mass manufacturing capabilities, and it was given all to China. And when you give it all to China, you end up with rows and rows of intercontinental ballistic missiles with MIRV capability. And like I say, I'm pessimistic about the political situation in the South China Seas. The Asian culture is one of honor, and if they feel that they've lost honor and prestige and markets, etc., and Xi Jinping has basically worked it into the constitution of the, well, it's not constitution, but the manifesto of the Chinese Communist Party, that he's the de facto emperor till he dies. Under these types of conditions, they might very well, I said push the button, but hedge their bets, right? So internally, if they're struggling because of floods, I mean, it seems the dam didn't give away, but and the rainy season is past somewhat, and they have to deal with hunger, and they've lost their trading status because the people in the defense infrastructure in other countries, if we can sit here and work out that there's this gain of function being given to it, are gonna understand it as well, and they have specific protocols, much like you should do with the BSL-4 breach, will kick into play, and China will react to that, and they might even try to preempt it, like the US might try to preempt something before the election, so that any gains that have been made with this trade war so far, and let's be clear that this trade war that was started, I want to say, when was that, 18 months ago? But as Hong Kong has fallen, as they're trying to remove the companies from the US, like TikTok, and so literally the US has done what the Chinese did when the pandemic broke out, which is nationalize their the industries that were making protective PPE for people, and they were going around the world buying up all the stocks as well that they'd initially sold to people, and so there's a tit for tat going on right now, and it could escalate very, very quickly, particularly under the current circumstances where, okay, the death rates might be coming down, but if the level of infection is such that we start seeing the neuropsychiatric components become overwhelming, the impact on children is not just the odd child suffering seizure, but it becomes something way, way worse, and all these factors play in. And I think as much as the premise of, it's tongue in cheek what I call the zombie, COVID zombie, the intention being that it would have people listen to the science in this sort of long form format, but there's also this issue with respect to the global political dimensions, and we have a COVID zombie alert. I blew the map away. Hang on, let's just see if we've got COVID zombie. Need an EMP. Yeah, do 5 meg. I don't want to be out in the rubble with my face falling off, looking for a zombie chick. Big dong warhead. Nice for someone to just cut you off so you can't even defend yourself. I don't know what the mod's problem is. I don't have other accounts, and I'm not from Vietnam, or I don't know what's going on, Emmett. If you've been I don't know. If the mods think you've done something, then at the moment the mods are clear to fire at will. When I finish, I'll take a look. Join the Discord. Let's say I need Dick Kev. The question is for no Japan. Yeah, I think Japan. Right now, you can basically think of Japan and Taiwan as fobs for the US military, and the Chinese would be stupid to leave anything approximating a defense structure. Yes, big boy.
What are you recording?
Daddy's recording.
What? And it's not going to be what?
Have you been drink? You need to drink some water, big boy. Your lips are dry. Go ask Mummy for a drink.
I already drank.
You already had a drink?
Mm-hmm.
What did you drink?
Milk!
Go ask Mummy for some juice or water. But you need some juice or water. You need a bath. Your face is dirty.
I took a bath.
When? Yesterday.
Yes.
So you need a bath today.
Yeah, I got your shirt.
I can see you got a new shirt.
Yo, Kush, I'm streaming. I'm streaming. Are you streaming too? Alright.
I'm here. Hello? Sorry, I didn't realize I had my mic on. I clicked it and it didn't turn on. Oh, I have a question for you. Hey, can you look at my profile picture and is it a flaming baseball or is it a flaming ace of spades on fire that says INF Ace? It is. Okay. Thank you. Because that's what I changed it to, but on my screen. But on my screen it's still baseball. Yeah, I changed it to INF because my name's Ace, so it's a ace of spades on fire. Because Inferno, flames. Yep. You guys want the event or no event? What event? Okay. Yeah.
Let's go. There can only be one winner. Let's go.
I'm down to hot drop and kill some people. Honestly, let's do it. I'm down. Go to the one by Milta. Go to the one by Milta. Milta's gonna be fun because there's gonna be more people that rush. That's kind of genius. I'm following you. What are you streaming on, Kush?
Let's go.
Go. Jump. Kush, we're following you. I'm on Twitch. Okay, I have neither, so.
Enemies ahead.
Trovo's what I watch.
Marked a location.
Yeah, I have Trovo. I have a bunch of, I follow a couple streamers. I'm just gonna peel off real quick and go get a gun. I'm lagging. I'm so hard. Hardcore lag. I'm dead. I lagged out for a second. There's a dude shooting at me with a shotgun. These dudes suck. Bro, I'm screwed. I don't have a gun yet. Hang on, let me get a gun, Peter. Yeah, dude, just dip because I had to. I legit didn't have a gun.
Watch out!
Bro, if I can get like an Uzi or something, I'm pushing you so hard. Yeah.
Kush, are you watching my stream?
You immediately want me to get into a car driving miles per 6 your son. I know that.
Peter's disconnected, my guy. I mean, I can maybe come over there because I have a Thompson, but these dudes look like they were owning. Because they hit me a couple times when they shot it. Crouch and lean. If you crouch and lean, they can't hear you. Bro, I'm about to push this. You guys, should I push you guys? Maybe? There's a dude trying to get on your roof. He's lasered. Yeah, he tried to go on your roof. He's lasered, dude.
Oh,
if you guys want to get guns, there's. You guys want to get I just got hacked. It is. Can somebody, like, try and kill this man?
The temple rises up.
Oh, well, thanks, guys. I appreciate
dipping
that.
from the temple.
I lagged out, and it was pulling me off in the midair. Like, it kicked me off your thing. I'm pretty sure that dude's a hacker. I'm not gonna lie. Because he, like, instant one-tapped me with an M16. Yeah.
Marked a location.
They're inside. They're right underneath you. Just wait until you hear them start shooting. Honestly, I'm not even gonna leave. I'm just gonna stay. Screw it. There they go. There they go. There they go. Go. Grab stuns. stun
I need
grenades.
ammo, bro.
It's already unlocked.
No.
They can hide behind those things. They can hide behind those things. Pretty sure the dude that killed me was their teammate. Well, GG's. I just lost 40 freaking points. I'm a freaking hacker. That's nice. Love this game.
I'm out. Need ammo.
He's in my clan. Yeah, he's... You've played with Tank and Kev before. Remember that duos game that we were messing around in? Yeah, I do. I just don't know how to use it. Okay. Actually, it is. It's INFX, lowercase x, ace. It's just my same name, but without the bar. What do you mean? You do? Okay, I'll just get it to you later then. Really? It's gonna take you. You're already in zone, so you're fine. You just stay there. Alright, well, I'm gonna go, guys. Alright, see you, dude.
Okay,